Where's the traffic?
Resolution is the April meeting.
Already made one.
By the way, I don't care when the April meeting is, just let me know.
All right, let's start. Cool.
I just have one question for Bob.
What's that?
Bob, this is a little different. It doesn't say verification anymore. It says current signer, verification, just for driver's license.
Yeah.
I need that thing back.
Which one?
I don't know the number.
I wouldn't know my number.
Oh, that's fine. Just
Good evening. Welcome to ANC 3F. I am Adam Tope, the chair. Let's quickly introduce. We have a quorum. We have 5 commissioners here out of 7, so that's a quorum.
Technically it's 6. And we have 5 out of 6, because we have a vacancy.
Well,
He hasn't gotten signed in
I don't
yet?
think he's been sworn in yet. In any event, I'm Adam Tope, chair. We can introduce ourselves real quick, starting with Bob.
I'm Bob Summerskill, I'm the treasurer, and I represent 3FO7.
Karen Perry, vice chair, 3FO2.
Sally Gresham, ANC 3F04.
Manoli Perniotakis, 3F05.
All right, first order of business is to approve the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Karen?
I have one on a liquor license that I'd like to discuss and see what we should do.
With who? For
It's this one.
seller trading. Okay. Can add that to the end. Anyone else? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Karen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0-0. So first up is commissioner announcements. Start with Bob and work our way down if you have an announcement. Okay. I have nothing. Karen?
Yep.
Sally?
I do. The WAMU AU American University is going to have a beautification day on April the 22nd, which is Earth Day, and they clean up their main campus by planting, mulching. All the students get into it. They ask for the residents, community near, and we have a building in our area, WAMU at 4401 Connecticut, and they were nice enough to host our Vision Committee charrette on March the 8th. So they are going to clean up the mini park, plant some new plants, and do mulching. They would love us to attend. There are some flyers up on the table about it, and you can also go to AU's website and put in Beautification Day, and you can volunteer. There's a registration list on that. The second thing is I just wanted to let people know at Park Van Ness, the big hole that everybody sees, now you can see Soapstone Park really well. They wanted me to let the community know that they will be doing tree trimming in the park, because I get a lot of emails about anybody touching the trees in the park. So I just wanted to notify the community that they will be doing that in the next couple of weeks. They have a special permit from the National Park Service. They have walked it with the Park Service. As a matter of fact, the Park Service has taken down a couple of large trees in the last 2 weeks. Other than that, the sidewalk will still be closed until June the 1st. They are looking into a new traffic control plan with Mark McHugh of Public Space at DDOT.
Manila?
Well, first of all, I want to make sure that everybody who is interested and potentially eligible to apply for an ANC grant, we have a soft deadline in April that we look for applications for grants. Soft, it's soft in so much as we'll actually take applications at any time, but we're have a target of trying to get a critical mass in April. It's been a busy month on merch school-related issues with Martha McIntosh from the Merch LSAT and Commissioner Summerskill. We took Councilmember David Grosso on a tour of the school to raised concerns about the condition of the school with him in the last couple of weeks, with an additional tour for Council members Che and McDuffie, the Deputy Chancellor, and DGS Director Hanlon, who will be speaking to us later tonight. On that, I'd urge everybody to visit merchlookingforward.org for more information about some of the issues that are going on related to merch and the merch renovations, also relevant to the resolution we passed last month. Also on that, I'll also note that ANC 3E passed a resolution very similar to the resolution we passed last month, almost verbatim. 3G is taking it up later this week, was the last I heard from 3-4G. So we appreciate their support and unity on the issue. In addition, the boundary reassessment process has been ongoing. There's been a number of meetings over the course of the past month. I planned on holding a meeting on the 1st of April to talk about with this immediate ANC community. Looks like we may have to postpone that. One, the primary is that night, and two, I have a required Stoddard soccer coaching clinic that I have to go to. So we'll look at an opportunity to find a night that works. There's also some working groups related to the boundaries that I believe I'll be participating in that first week or so of April. So we'll put out an announcement when that meeting will occur.
Great, thank you. Next up on our agenda is announcements open forum. If you're in the audience and have a question or concern about 3F that's something not on our agenda, you can come up to our microphone and speak about whatever you wish. It's really nice. David?
Chairman, I'm David Bardeen, live at 4701 Connecticut Avenue Northwest. The Commission has discussed from time to time issues involving stormwater runoff and the erosion it causes both at the top of Soapstone Valley, where Albemarle Street falls down 40 feet into the valley, and down in the valley itself. I'm hoping that next month you would consider possibly weighing in with our three key DC government agencies, that they intensify their cooperation with one another and coordination with one another. Two of your commissioners, Commissioner Gresham and Commissioner Ray, have contacted Councilmember Shea's office, and through them have had some discussion begun amongst the agencies. But where we need to get to eventually is a much more intensive coordination amongst them, not just for our neighborhood, but citywide. We've got a citywide goal that by 2032, 75% of the landscape will be treated with some kind of green infrastructure, low-impact development to deal with stormwater runoff. To get there means scaling up an awful lot of what's happening and much, much more intensive coordination amongst agencies, each of whom works in its own silo and to some extent talks to each other. So I'm here just to say this is an issue I think is important to our neighborhood, important to every other neighborhood, and our own interests shouldn't get lost. And frankly, the attitude of this ANC, the attitude of this neighborhood is such that I can't think of a better place for these three agencies to try out, even if it's a guinea pig analysis, try out whether they can't work much more closely and intensively together. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look into that, and I'll talk to you at some point. Does anyone else have anything? Okay. Next up is Brian Hanlon from DGS. So we invited Director Hanlon here to talk about what DGS does and provide us some updates on Hearst, Merch, and the Forest Hills Playground, since his agency's kind of in charge of running the show. So I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you. I don't want to turn my back to anybody, so can I move this back?
Got it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me this evening. I'm Brian Hanlon. I'm the Director of the Department of General Services. And first, let me just verify, how much time do you have? and that'll inform how much I spend on the elevator explanation of what DGS does.
I've put in half an hour, so
Okay.
you can.
Well, I won't
whatever.
I won't drown you with details, but just to give you a sense. First of all, let me say I'm actually a native Washingtonian. I grew up not too far from here in American University Park, and I've spent my whole life living in the city, and came to government about 4 years ago, after spending a career working in planning and economics and architecture. And so it's been a real a distinct honor, frankly, to work for the district and to have the opportunity to do what I do with Department of General Services. We, as an agency, have been in existence since October 1 of 2011. And I began with the district in a director position with the Department of Real Estate Services in January of 2011, right after Mayor Gray came in. And it was right after that the mayor decided, let's do this consolidation and take all of the capital and maintenance programs in the city and consolidate them into one group. So hence the formation of DGS, which subsumed the Office of Public Education Facilities Modernization, OPEFM. People remember that. We're doing all the schools and some of the parks. Department of Real Estate Services, which had a focus on municipal real estate and design and construction. And then the capital and maintenance programs for the Department of Parks and Recreation, the Fire Department, and the Police Department. So we are about 700 people, comprised of six divisions outside of the Office of the Director. So we have a portfolio division, which manages our about almost 27 million square feet of a portfolio. About half of that is actually comprised of schools. About 15 million square feet is a school portfolio, and the rest is municipal, parks and rec, and the like. How are you? And the portfolio division is led by Jonathan Kane. He's the Associate Director for Portfolio. So we manage all agency tenant locations, and we've got some in leasing where, like at the One Judiciary Square facility down at Judiciary Square, ground floor there's retail. It's private retail. So we actually manage that too. So it's part of our portfolio. The Capital Construction Division is led by June Locker, and June manages this year's capital program is about $675 million, I think. And she's got about 100 or so people in her division, and she's managing the whole capital program and everything that we're building. The Facilities Division is our largest, and that's led by Ollie Harper, and that's about 400 people of our 700, and they're funded at about $400 million this year. About 3/4 of that is for the commodities that we purchase. We actually buy all of the natural gas and electricity and water and the like for the district. I actually want to pause on that for a moment and just say our next division is Sustainability and Energy, and that's led by Sam Brooks. And we've done, frankly, some pretty amazing things in the last several years with DGS. I'd encourage all of you to take a look at a website that we developed. It's called buildsmartdc.com. And we negotiated over some time with PEPCO, and we got real energy use data in 15-minute increments. We get it on the next day. So we basically almost have real-time data on a per-building basis, and we're able to look at the energy use curves and drill in and start to identify where we can affect savings, which sometimes is a technology solution or a system solution, but more often than not, it's a behavioral solution. And so we actually, in concert with DCPS, started a program somewhat recently, a DC Green Schools Challenge, and where we instituted this program and allowed students to see, and other building occupants to see, here's how your building is performing, here's how it's performing relative to other buildings. We saw significant energy reduction. In one school, 38%. In other schools, 25, 23, 21%. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to do. So that's our Sustainability and Energy Division. And we have a Procurement Division. We manage our own procurement, and it's led by J.W. Lanham. And he, of course, is managing all of the capital and operating procurements. And then lastly, we've got Protective Services Division. so if you go down to the Wilson Building or any number of our other municipal buildings, you'll likely see a uniform officer that looks sort of like a Metropolitan Police Department officer. They're generally one of our men or women, and they're in the Protective Services Division. We have about 120 sworn officers, and they oversee contract staff that is much larger, but they're the security experts in the district and help keep our buildings and their occupants safe. So that's the quick. That was about 87 stories of elevator explanation of DGS. And I guess before I guess open up to questions if you've got them. If you've got any that are general about the agency, I'm happy to dive into that. And I know some of you may have questions. I'm joined tonight by Kenny Diggs, and Kenny is my communications guru with the agency, and actually does a lot of our community outreach. And then James Partlow, who also works in our communications department, communications and government affairs. Do you need him to be on microphone or? Yeah.
So Director Hanlon is going to talk about the agency and how it operates, and I personally will talk about the 3 projects that are interests of the ANC, which is Hearst, Murch, and Forest Hill. So you can ask any questions to Director Hanlon, agency, and I'll move into my side.
So I'll field whatever questions I can.
Do any commissioners have a general DGS question?
Sure. Thank you for coming tonight, both of you. We really appreciate it, and it's obviously of high interest to the community, given some of the things that are going on in our area. A couple general questions before we get into any of the specifics. What is the relationship between DGS and the Office of Risk Management?
Well, we have the same relationship with the Office of Risk Management that every other agency has. We work in tandem with ORM, Office of Risk Management, to look at inherent risk-related issues in the district.
I guess
and
specific to
DGS.
construction projects.
They don't inspect our construction projects. We contract with with our general contractors, and contractors are bound by OSHA regulations. And so they're building and they're setting up their construction sites, and they're doing their construction in concert with applicable codes and regulations and OSHA guidelines.
Okay.
So I have not to date had any interaction with ORM on any of our construction projects. We do interact with them on the operating side. If there's questions about, might be getting fire extinguishers upgraded, or it might be sprinkler systems or fire alarm systems, things like that, where they might have questions. So.
And I guess before we get into the specifics of the projects, I think one of the things that is definitely of high interest is the school modernization process.
Yeah.
Before we get into the specifics of any project, it'd be useful if you could talk a little bit about the process for a school modernization. So when does DGS usually engage with the school, and how does it proceed?
It's a great question. So I'll try to give as succinct an explanation to that process as I can. We, in every, whether it's let me just explain a few terms before I dive in, because I don't want to. We do school modernizations, and that envelops a number of project types. We have new buildings. Dunbar High School is an example of a brand new facility. Brookland Middle School is going up now. That is a new building. And then we do modernizations that are one-phase modernizations. Cardozo High School is an example where we go in and we did a historic renovation, restoration, modernization of the existing school. And wherever we can do that, we want to, because we want to maintain that kind of historical fabric in our building portfolio. When it probably is a good idea to not maintain the historical fabric, like in the case of the old Dunbar, which was actually the new old Dunbar, because the old Dunbar was beautiful, and then they built that thing in the 80s that looked like, or maybe it might have been late 70s. Sorry, I think Kenny is a graduate. You may have fond memories of that. It looked like a prison to me. So I was actually happy to tear that one down. So then we have phased projects, and the phased projects have actually evolved a great deal. So, and I just want to give you some kind of points of context. As the program emerged about 7 years ago or so, the notion was it's sort of like we're trying to feed as many hungry people as we possibly can. We can't fix everyone a full meal all at once, so we have to dole it out to get as many people fed as quickly as we possibly can. And so the phase projects was a way to do that, where in the summer we would actually do $7 or $8 million worth of work in 8 weeks. These are probably, and frankly, the most intense projects we do. They're $7 or $8 million, but you have to be, frankly, one of the most sophisticated contractor types to be able to do these projects, because it's in 8 weeks, and you cannot be late. You can't, on August 12th or 15th or whatever it is, when the students show up or the teachers show up, you can't be late. We would do a phase 1, a 2, and a 3. So the concept was 3 phases equals a full modernization for a school. Is it slightly more expensive on a per school basis to do it that way? Yes. But it gets more schools done faster for as many constituents as possible. There's no perfect solution, but it was really the best solution that we could come up with. What we have found in the last several years is that the phase process has sort of morphed from 3 phases to basically 2. We're doing more work in that 8 weeks than we ever did before. In my first summer, we did more phase 1s than had ever been accomplished, and we basically doubled the contract value that occurred. And we found that you can't get a whole lot more done than about $14 million worth of work in a summer without, I mean, I used to have really thick brown hair a couple years ago, and this is what happens to you. So what we found is we sort of hit the envelope with how much you could actually get done, what contractors get done, what the construction market can actually sustain. So we basically morphed it from 3 phases to about 2. And so what we still refer to as a phase 1 has essentially become a phase, 1 to 1.5, and then the balance is down the road. So that's the kind of the description of the overall program. The process is one where we are engaged with the Deputy Mayor for Education, and in particular DCPS, on a weekly basis, and it's throughout the year. So we're working with DCPS. They've got people on staff that actually develop the program document, or what we call the EdSpec, the Educational Specification. And the EdSpec is developed with the school community, which is comprised of the teachers, often parents, and that's a process that begins very early, right around it may begin, say, 9 or 6 months before we've actually hired an architect. Sometimes it's 3 months, but it starts before we've actually got the architect on board. When we get the architect on board, at that time, and Kenny, jump in if I've got some of the sequencing here a little bit off, but that's around the time when we'll actually begin to engage the community in what we call the school improvement team, which is a term that we've now actually morphed into site improvement team, because we do the same process for our parks projects. And the SIT team is comprised generally of, say, 8 to maybe 12 people, ideally. It tends to get unwieldy if it's more than that, of key constituencies from the community, which may include the principal, some teachers, PTA individuals, and any number of other kind of permutations, and that's generally how that's comprised. On any given project, we'll have one SIT meeting a month at least, sometimes more, and we'll do that throughout the design process and throughout the construction process. So through the life of a project, it might be a 30-month project, we've had 35, 40, 50 meetings with the community. Again, it's a process that occasionally is criticized. I have great confidence in it. I have great confidence in our team. Can it be improved? Absolutely. But right now it's a process that we continue to look to tweak. We're willing to evolve it, but it works, and we've found it to be generally successful. So that's, and the SIT team process, that community engagement, is managed by DGS and DCPS in concert with one another. Because we're delivering the capital program, but it has to meet the programmatic needs of DCPS, we have to work really closely. And of course, those two things revolve very much around the numbers, which affect what we're building. The budget is impacted. Every time a room fluctuates in a building, the budget goes up or down, up or down. So we work very closely with DCPS. One of the questions that I get all the time is, who makes budget decisions? And the honest answer is that it's a decision that's made in concert with the agencies. We are the implementing agency. DCPS is the program agency in a sense. They're running the educational programs. We have just by nature of what we do, being embedded in the physical school, taking care of them, we tend to have the better idea of what the buildings need. If you think of them as patients in a hospital in a sense, we know which buildings are sicker and which buildings need more care, and so that's a conversation that's part of everything that we do with DCPS. Likewise, the Deputy Mayor for Education and DCPS have a much greater sense of where the educational seats need to be added in the city and how do you keep a balance as we try to raise the entire city up all at once as closely to possible as we can. And that's DCPS and DMA are going to tend to have more weight in those decisions. And then together we come up with decisions that work. And of course, as Kenny reminds me, ultimately the mayor, we make recommendations and the mayor makes these decisions. So.
Great. Commissioners, anyone else have a general question? Karen?
Yes.
Hi, this is a little different. Can you give me a quick update on Wilson Pool? I keep seeing on the list of all the things that go wrong at that pool that was DGS constructed.
By quick update, are you suggesting that my prior moments at the microphone have been too long?
No, I think most people are.
I can talk faster. I can say less.
But there's been a lot of things going wrong at that pool.
Yeah, we understand that, and Wilson Aquatic Center is one of the most well-loved, heavily utilized buildings in our portfolio, and it's a staggering number of folks that actually show up there. And so we understand it gets a lot of love and it needs a lot of TLC. There's a number of things that we've been doing. One, and let me just say, the last 2 years, getting our arms around the whole portfolio, part of that's a learning curve. Part of that's getting a sense of how do we take better care of the portfolio that we have. How do we coordinate better with the Department of Parks and Recreation, things like that. So I think we're doing a better job of that at Wilson. We have found a couple of things to be the case. One is there's a water pressure problem that you may be alluding to.
It's not one problem. It's been a series of things from, the robberies to this not working to that not working.
And I can't speak to the robberies.
I know it feels like it was built too quickly, not correctly.
Well, I think it's a good building. I think it gets well utilized. And buildings are like people in a sense. They need rest. Last summer we had, I think it was 120 hours or 180 hours of temperatures above 80 degrees. And all of the systems, and then what do people do when they're really hot? They go to a building like that to cool off. The building actually experienced failures during that time. Not because it was poorly built or designed, but because the systems weren't built to sustain that kind of extreme weather, which has actually taught us to really, we're started to consider upgrading beyond the kind of the code requirements in the region, the types of systems that we're putting in these buildings so that they can actually withstand. Because likewise, this winter we had extremely cold temperatures, and we had the same thing happen in reverse in a couple buildings, where we couldn't maintain the right temperatures because it was 5 degrees outside. And the systems that are used in this region, not just by DGS, but in the region, had a difficult time keeping up with those temperatures. So we've got, with regard to, let me just address the water pressure issue. We are committed to figuring that one out. That I've been in conversation with DC Water on water pressure issues that may exist in the neighborhood, and we're looking at developing kind of an engineered solution for the building proper, so that people taking showers won't experience low water pressure, that sort of thing. In terms of the other issues, I think one of the things that we found last year was that it irritates people more when there is an unscheduled closure for maintenance reasons than it does if we just say, oh, by the way, in 6 weeks we're going to shut down for 4 or 5 days because we got to do something. Now, I hope that I'm right in that, but what we found is that we think that if we're scheduling certain types of routine maintenance weeks in advance, at least people know. And just to give you an idea, if you need to do something that requires that you drain the pool at Wilson, it takes like about 3 days to drain the pool, because you can't dump it all in at once. You have to dechemicalize it, and then you can't just flood the system with all that much water. So it takes about 3 days. Likewise, it takes about 3 days to fill. So any type of maintenance work that involves, say, working above the ceiling or in that space, you could see the pool closed for 6 or 7 or 8 days. And it's just the nature of what it takes. And I think in the past there's been more of a tendency to fix things when they break. And my philosophy is, let's get out in front of it and let's take care of things in a more proactive way. So we're working on that. And
Thank you.
Yeah. That probably wasn't quick enough for you, but it was.
Not really.
Yeah. My apologies.
Quick question.
Oh, I have to have a quick question. Thank you for coming. I'm the single-member commissioner with the Forest Hills Playground, and I've been heavily involved with the planning process, whereas other people are doing the school. I thank you for doing the community involvement. However, I would like to know, once they do the design, which I don't know, Kenny, if you're going to address this, it may be too specific. I would just like to know, I have more specific questions. I'd like to know how DGS teams with DPR.
Well, kind of in a similar fashion to the way we do on the school projects. DPR has individuals that are much more familiar with their program and their activities program, and so they work with us to come up with the right kind of layout to meet the demographics of a neighborhood, the right kinds of equipment, whether is it for a 3 to 7 year old age group or that that slightly older age group. So they come up with that menu of stuff, and then we of course are doing the implementation. And we, just like we do for DCPS projects, we're going out and meeting the community with DPR and in concert with them.
So who does the RFP?
The request for proposals, we would manage the RFP process, but it would be done in tandem with Department of Parks and Recreation.
Okay.
And in that case, you're talking about an RFP process for a designer or a builder? That's
Yes.
a question.
Design,
Yes.
build.
So we would manage the procurement for that.
Right.
That's right.
Okay, and I have some specific questions on that once you get to the playground.
Okay.
Okay. I think maybe if there's like 1 or 2 general DGS questions not on the 3 big specific projects, we could have them served.
Yes, sir.
What is the relationship and how do you interface with the Park Service, the National Capital Planning, sort of the federal superstructure that we've got here? The reason why I ask is you've got like nearly 6,000 students and employees at DCPS, and right in the middle of that is the National Park. And we seem to have no mechanism through which to formally engage the National Park Service. And how do you do that, and is there a mechanism?
Well, let's see. That's a tough question to answer succinctly, but we don't have a periodic formal interface with the National Park Service. We have communications with them because we have sites that are adjacent. We have school sites that are on land that was deeded to the district that is actually, its DNA goes back to federal ownership, so there are therefore restrictions on what we can do there. So I am on the phone with my counterpart at National Park Service on occasion to talk about issues like that. with regard to national, the NCPC, when we go through the public approvals process on projects, we'll engage with those entities as required. So we go through Commission of Fine Arts and that sort of thing. But does that help answer your question?
Yeah, but I just wonder, would it be valuable in your eyes to have sort of a regular mechanism to engage the National Park Service?
Yeah, the city. Yeah, Kenny's informing me that the city administrator does that at a more global level. I think, I'm always for more kind of collaborative thinking. I'd be willing to, noodle on it and see, what we can do. I think we have a pretty good relationship with them, and if there's something to be gained by meeting more often, then we would consider that.
Cool. I guess at this point, I think it makes sense for Kenny to kind of give an update, and then what we'll do is, commissioners, you can each ask a quick question if you have one, and then we'll turn it over to the audience for a few minutes. I've worked with Kenny many evening hours over the past 2 years on the Hearst renovation, so I know he's very, very, very responsive. If you have questions that you don't get a chance to ask, you email him, he responds. He always does. Turn it over to him.
Okay, so I'm going to be succinct because I know you have specific questions, or I'm going to be quick, and I'm not trying to rush over anything. I'm just going to hit the highlights, and then you guys ask me your specific questions, and commissioners definitely ask me very specific questions, and I'll answer as much as possible. So Hearst, that we've gone through, it's a 3-phase project, as Director Hanlon talked about. One clarification that Director Hanlon talked about, we have the SIT team that often has an ANC member on it, but we do parallel community meetings because of the restrictive size of the school improvement team or site improvement team. So we do that to have meetings like this, and that's where the commissioners and I typically meet. So on the phase 1 for Hearst, we did classrooms, bathrooms, hallways. That was to be completed in 2013, and so that was completed this past summer. We're in the phase 2 process, which is a building B. Hearst will have 3 buildings, like most of the full modernizations. So we're on the B building, which will be done in August of 2014. And then in the phase 3 project is a C building, and that will be done in August of 2015. I know that you've seen in the Northwest Current and the Washington Post a lot about funding. To date, that available funding is about $19 million for that. And so what we found is that high schools have a certain amount, and middle schools also have around that price tag for getting done. So that's Hearst. Everything is progressing as planned. Some people want it done faster, obviously, and we're trying to accommodate and not have where you say we build too fast or too slow. So we're trying to accommodate best as possible. So that's Hearst. Next slide. So then merch. I know, and I like the stickers. I know that merch is a hot topic, and right now we have initial planning for the funding, an allotment of about $3 million. And so with that, nothing has changed with merch in terms of where where it is in the queue for the last city CIP capital improvement plan. And so where we are physically today, and obviously the mayor's budget will come out on the 3rd, and we don't foresee any surprises on that. We'll probably have a SIT team start to form probably the latter part of this year or about the summertime.
I'm actually touring merch tomorrow.
Yeah.
Take a look at it.
Yeah, Councilmember Che, and then our oversight Councilmember McDuffie will also be on that tour, and you guys are welcome. I think that's at about 10 o'clock tomorrow. I'll be there. And then Forest Hill, I'm going to go over that relatively quickly because I know you guys have questions for that. So with Forest Hill, it's a part of Mayor Gray's DC Play DC initiative. And so right now we have the request for proposals out. And then the construction is expected to be completed in fall of 14. And so the estimated budget right now is about $1.5 million. Next slide. And then just some clarifying points for the director about what we do and then what DGS does not do. So in talking about the forestry, DGS does not cut down trees. We typically don't do landscaping around the city, but we do collect and maintain like the parks and the recs. And we, let's see what else we don't. We don't build libraries and we don't maintain libraries. That is the only buildings in our portfolio that we do not handle.
With only several exceptions in that there are several location sites. Deanwood, Rosedale is one, but there's a library and recreation setting where we build both. Libraries manage their site.
Correct. And we've been a victim of our success, right? So where the project has gotten larger, DGS was formed of several agencies so that the left hand and the right hand knew what it was doing. Mayor Gray wanted to make sure that that you had basically one person to talk to about one thing, and then that with the school projects that they got done with and Director Hanlon doesn't want to boast a lot of times, but we build these schools for 50 and 60 years with quality quality materials. And so, Wilson was the beginning, and we've been learning ever since, and they just keep getting better and better, and we're changing lives. And so that's why most people want their school now. And so it's just, as you know, DC is fortunate to have robust budgets and surpluses, but the construction community couldn't build as many buildings as we need to build all at one time. And so that's why we have this balance. And Ward 3 has been has received a lot of funds for under the Gray administration for this modernization, and we feel like the parks as well are the next thing or are happening right now to see a dramatic change. Because if you saw the parks last summer that we've done, the parks that we're doing this summer, like this one, are going to be great, and you're going to love them. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you have.
So I guess we'll start with commissioners. We'll just start with Bob, work our way down if you have one question.
It's my understanding that the schools don't have recycling.
No, that's actually not
That's
accurate.
not true.
Correct. We have recycling. The Energy and Sustainability Division works with DCPS and the custodial staff in the schools to do that. And where we don't have it, it's coming.
Yeah, if I just add,
Yep.
it is an element of our program that we recognize needed improvement, and so it's an ongoing process to get the education, to make it easier for folks to do, all the way through managing the contracts so that the people that are picking stuff up are doing it in a way that's consistent with our sustainability goals. We are launching as well a composting program, so that's getting underway now.
At the schools or
Yeah,
citywide?
it's piloting at certain schools. I don't have the detail in my head, but we're starting it and we're going to expand it.
Great, thank you.
I have none. Karen?
Oh.
Sally?
Okay.
Sure.
I'm going to talk about Forest Hills because I know everybody wants to get to merch.
No worries.
But I've worked with quite a few of your DGS employees, Shippa and Stacy West, from DPR. The community charrettes were wonderful, and presentations by the landscape architects, Siteworks, and Studio, whatever it's called, Smith and Murray. We felt like the community really liked that. Once we got past that, we've been told that we cannot be in this next design development phase and the final drawings phase, because that was only a conceptual design phase.
Okay.
Being a designer, I know a lot can change between the conceptual design and construction documents and construction.
Yep.
And merch and schools are going to ask about that too. I'd like to know why I keep being put off and not being able to see the next phase of the project, such as the design and the construction documents, before it goes to construction.
Okay, so I don't know specifically why that is the case with you being put off. I'm not sure whom you're working with. I'll give you my phone number
I need to talk to
and my email. But let me explain the process for schools as well as Parks and Recs. So the process essentially is that DGS is considered the design and build expert.
Okay.
DCPS is considered the program expert as well as DPR. The community is one of the end users, in that DCPS and DPR are our end user. And it sounds complicated, but it's not. It's those two agencies' resources that they are contracting us out to execute, but you, the taxpayer and the community, are the ultimate end user. So what happens is we collect all of the input from the community and then get DCPS or DPR to say what it is, to make the final decision in concert with DGS in terms of the construction part. And so then we roll that part out. Now, where it depends on necessarily the community or the neighborhood or the project is where there is more engagement or less engagement. And so you're saying that you want more engagement.
Yes.
We're saying that we're not discouraging more engagement. We just have to figure out how to do that.
Great.
Because Director Hanlon is about proactiveness.
We
So,
definitely want that.
so we can make that happen.
Great. And then the segue question to that is, we have a difficult time on the maintenance of the Forest Hills Playground.
Okay.
Especially what I call no man's land that nobody wants to take responsibility of, and that's from basically the baseball field down to the street on Brandywine.
Right.
Any of the right-of-ways.
Okay.
And I'm being put off by that too, and I need to be able to get to the right people.
Okay.
And how to maintain this area.
I smile because our facilities division is probably the most criticized, but the most get it done team, in that a lot of the places that we are told that don't get taken care of, we find out what agency or what entity is supposed to take care of it, because a lot of times it's Friends of Agreement, it's a district agency, and Ollie Harper and James Jackson and Ruth Jenkins and Kim all take care of. They just say we'll handle it, got it. And so what I'll do is when we talk is to find out who is supposedly in charge, and then
Right.
see what we can work out
Right.
to make that happen.
Because we also deal with NPS, National
Understood.
Park Service.
Yep.
It comes in
Help
play.
us understand precisely what areas you're
Right.
talking about.
Yep.
Yes.
And so we'll
Okay.
figure that out, and we do that, like medians are.
Well, I have quite a
issue.
few constituents that love the sidewalk. We're very pleased that the sidewalk was put in on Brandywine. but it's just not being maintained.
Gotcha.
And so either we need to do something as a community,
Yep.
cleanup day, or I need to understand how to go about getting this done for my constituents.
Okay, no worries. And the other part is that I wear two hats: the communications person, as Brian, Director Hanlon, alluded to, but I also do government affairs. So that's why I know you're
Okay,
struggling.
great. You're going to have the same questions with merch, too.
No problem. No problem.
All right, so I'm going to turn to Manoli now. if you have a question.
Kenny, thanks again for coming tonight. Just wanted to follow. Well, first of all, it's great to hear you say you don't foresee any surprises in the budget. I think the merch community would like to hear that from the mayor and the chancellor as well. But glad to hear it from you. And you may be aware the deputy mayor referred to the facilities as inadequate. So we'll look forward to hosting you, both of you, I guess, tomorrow to see the conditions of the school. But just wanted to follow up. When you talked about the merch not being in the capital improvement plan, the budget is due to be released in April. So what is the actual trigger for DGS's involvement? Is it inclusion in the budget? Is it the fiscal year when the budget is actually enacted?
So it's
Because just by way of reference, the SIT has been in place for about 18 months.
correct.
So you'll find a SIT ready to go.
So to clarify, I guess if I misspoke, and I apologize, merch is definitely in
Yes.
the school, the capital improvement plan.
Yes.
It is
okay.
already there.
That's why I was a little surprised to hear you say
For
that.
the,
What's your question?
So what happens?
so what happens?
What happens? So if April 3rd, do you turn up at the next SIT meeting?
Not, well, based on the community, almost. Again, it talks about engagement and the different communities. So what happens is that, so we'll talk about the 2014 school capital improvement plan. So it goes to council. Council then deliberates over what part they'll approve or anything like that, and then it goes to Congress, and then they sign off on it, and then it's enacted in October. And so from there, about between October and November, depending on when that all shakes itself out, then we, DGS, start reaching out to the principals of the school. If merch already has a SIT team, then we would talk about when the first meeting was. Because it would probably be before Thanksgiving, we would try to have a meeting. If not, we would try to have one after Thanksgiving so that people are there 2 weeks after that SIT team. If it's already established, we would have a broader community meeting, and then we would talk about the timeline for the school, and then when funds are released, when the RFP would go out, with the builder, project, we would introduce the project manager, we would introduce the builder when the builder comes on, the architect would come on first, obviously, and then we would just go down the road. And so the SIT team would probably meet monthly. If they're working groups, individual sub-working groups, they would work that out amongst the group. If not, they would meet monthly. And then the community, we would meet probably 3 months consecutively, and then put them on a quarterly kind of schedule when sending monthly updates, similar to what we do now for Hearst and Mann and all the rest of our projects. And then we would have some sort of groundbreaking, and then we would have a ribbon cutting, and then the school would be open.
Sounds
And you're
fantastic.
going to do it all next year, right?
No, ma'am, I did not say that.
So just one last
8
question
weeks.
before we get to members of the community. So it's October, assuming that it's in the budget is enacted in the next fiscal year. Is it regardless of what happens with the federal budget? Is there any connection to passage of appropriations?
So we learned last year that I think I said something kind of flip at a Hearst meeting, and said that barring an act of Congress, we would have the budget in October, and go figure. We had an act of Congress. So
Okay.
I will not say that ever again. With no unforeseen issues, October is typically that date.
Thanks.
You know, I mean, look, frankly, the mayor will do everything that he can, as he did in the last fiasco we had with the federal government, to keep things running, to keep them moving.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's, well, we can't afford
To slow down or stop certain processes because I still have the end date to meet. So, yeah, I mean, if things are queued up, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that the community engagement process, the design process, moves along as quickly as it can.
Great. Okay, so I think at this point we have time for a few questions. We might not get to every single person. I'll ask you, please don't editorialize all that much. If you have questions about DGS and these projects, just ask them quickly. Representatives from our council member and mayor are sitting in the audience, so they hear you and see you.
Adam, I just wanted to make it, not a quick editorial, but I did want to just commend Brian. I'm Michael Fabricant with the mayor's office. I'll be outside if anyone has any specific issues, but just wanted to relay the type of quality of work that Director Hanlon, Kenny, Ruth, everybody at DGS is doing in Ward 3, but also throughout the city. Palisades, Playground, the firehouse in Cleveland Park. I mean, DGS does such a great job with all the agencies that I deal with on a daily basis. There's none finer than DGS, and they really do such a great job, and I just think it should be noted for the record.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I guess if you have a question for them, we'll start with this. Yes.
Hi, I'm Martha McIntosh, and I'm the parent co-chair of the Margellus AT, and I'm going to be seeing you tomorrow as well on tour, so I'm looking forward to that.
Good.
But I guess what I'd like to ask is, you talked about the timeline for starting with the SID. Can you walk through the expectation for the timeline from the time you start? For example, merch right now, you said you don't expect any, surprises in the budget. Frankly, I'm hoping for a surprise in the budget. And the reason is because we have $3 million for 2015 and $17 million for 2016, $12 million for the year after that in the current budget. I'd like to know how that timeline works through when you would expect a project to be completed and the school to be completed and ready to go.
Do you want to take that one? Or
Yeah,
can
I
take
do
it?
my best. I mean, and to be frank, I don't have the dollar allotments in my head for this because
It's
of.
3/17/12.
All right, thank you. Well, 3/17/12. It's got a ring to it. That in accordance with that puts us in. Let's see, FY15 is 3, 16 is 17, and 17 million. FY17 is 12 million. So your question is.
When would construction actually begin under that budget?
Construction would begin in FY16, and it's hard for me to tell you exactly when because, we would have to develop a phasing program for this school, where we, like in the case of, I guess if I use Mann and Hurst as an example, Mann and Hurst we did like an on-site renovation during the summer, like we would do any normal sort of phase 1 type project. And that would likely occur in FY16. But the way we would probably have areas of the site that are identified for, I'm imagining some form of an addition there. Is the current school capacity about, what, 250?
The current school capacity is listed at 488. We currently have 600.
And that's with,
students.
That is with the temporary
That's
students.
Yes,
one
you've got,
temporary
and I'm actually talking more about the existing building, not the
Well, that's a whole
demountables.
other question as to how capacity is determined and
Yeah.
why. But for our original building, I believe the capacity is about
It's 370.
3.
Yeah, those older buildings, they, like that Hearst and Mann, and I've driven past Merch a million times, but I don't have like the exact shape of it in my head. But those are about 250 students once you reconfigure them, and then the additions take the additional capacity of like 400 to 600 students. That's
we
what.
already have that level of students as of next year. We'll have 680 students.
Yeah, and I frankly can't tell you where it will be capped. Whether it, there's a point where, it's 600 or 700 people. The deputy mayor is going through a process of looking at the entire city and, where students are drawing from and how to take a closer, more strategic look at boundaries. That does, I think, to some degree, and maybe in some cases to a large degree, impact the number of students that are showing up at schools. I think Merch is a recipient of kids from around the city. That's
It's not,
Not anymore.
not to the extent they
What's
were.
in Boundary Grove?
So I think to really get to what you're asking about the capacity issue, and then I'll go right into the schedule, is the ed specification, working with the principal, DCPS, and the SIT team will talk about capacity and talk about need for overcrowding or population or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to give you a precise picture of what will start first is almost certainly the renovation of the existing building, and then how the rest plays out. When we put a shovel in the ground, we have to make sure that the demountables are not going to be shoved aside. It'll be a relatively complex process to figure out how to lay it all out and not be disruptive to the current program.
So in other words, if you start with the current building, that would have to probably be over summer?
That would probably be, most likely like a summertime project.
So in other words, if we're starting in fiscal year 2016, you're talking about the earliest doing any construction is the summer of 2016?
I think that's the way the dollars are currently allocated, right?
So any project, most full modernizations take 18 to 24 months. And so depending on when the shovel gets in the ground and when the project manager gets on board, which are not, so it's the project manager first and then the shovel in the ground, that's when we can tell you exactly when the start and end date will be.
And that's 18 to 24 months from the time you start the actual construction?
Correct. Yeah, and again, it's not to hit you with too many caveats, but it's all based on how the funding is allocated each year. It's based on the size and scale of the project and that sort of thing. And just as a global comment, which I don't. I guess it almost goes without saying. We're living in an incredibly heated construction market right now, and from the prior 5 or 6 years, enjoyed a pricing holiday from vendors, from general contractors. We were getting keep the lights on prices from folks. We're not getting that anymore, and so it's putting huge pressures on our ability to deliver every year. And that's one of the variables that we have to play with.
All right, so I'll take the back corner there.
So I guess my question is this: given you've just heard some of the concerns laid out about what people at the school are experiencing, as DCPS and DJS and the mayor's office make their assessments about who has to go next, what criteria are used to do those evaluations, and are they done every year?
Yeah, they are, and it's. I would say that, I sort of talked about this a minute ago, but we're going to have, we're like, I'm sorry for the medical analogies, but it's like getting different doctors in the room, all with different levels of expertise. We're the folks that have the more informed opinion about the physical needs of the building, if it's an existing building, how its systems are operating, what they need, how long it's going to take us to do X, Y, and Z. The Deputy Mayor for Education, Abigail Smith, and DCPS, Chancellor Kaya Henderson, are going to have, their voice is going to come into play with regard to the queuing order and how schools should be addressed from meeting the greatest amount of needs across the entire city. So they're.
But presumably, from where you guys sit, the school is already at the top, right?
Oh, yes, and you know what? The truth is a lot of schools are at the top, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there are a lot of. I go around the whole city.
I mean, looking at actual criteria, who's at the top?
So that's not. It's
When the systems aren't working, we all agree about that, and the question is, I guess your point is there are schools where the systems are working equally bad.
There are buildings that still have great need in the portfolio, and it is just the truth. We can't get to them fast enough.
Okay, so you guys have your list of schools that need work. DCPS presumably has the responsibility for going, oh, this school is 300 kids over capacity and growing by 10% a year.
Right.
How do those two interact?
And help us understand why a school at 35% capacity is at 130 million.
Okay.
Or 40% capacity like Dunbar, and a school that's at 150% capacity.
Well, you know what? Complex problems, okay? And so we're building high schools that right now aren't fleshing out with a full enrollment, but they will. And so we don't want to build something that's tailored to 600 or 700 students when, if you look 7, 8, 10 years down the road, we have a public school system that's healthier, that's more robust, and it's going to feed these schools. So I'm not saying that we're designing and building for Easter Sunday, so to speak, but we have to. These schools have to have some additional capacity based on where we're going as a city. And so, to your question, when does the conversation occurs weekly between DCPS, the Deputy Mayor's Office, and DGS on the entire program? And
Well, I guess if that's true, I think that there's a fair amount of people here who find it baffling that Merch is not at the top. Because by any objective measure, I challenge DGS to show us a school.
I don't want to argue with you. I get it, and you know what? I'm in a room with folks. God love you, but you're passionate advocates for Merch, and that we need that. I think that's a healthy, energetic thing that makes our city stronger. It makes our community stronger. But the fact is that as you go around the city, there are other buildings and other wards that have great needs, and you're more familiar, with all respect, with the needs that you're confronting on a daily basis. And I get that, and I understand it. And if I could wave a wand and address all this stuff all at once, I would. But we can't.
Miss, I apologize. What I'm going to do is this woman in the red, we're going to have asked one more question, and then we don't have time to, unfortunately, talk about this all night. But Kenny, if you don't mind sharing your email, and obviously in the hall you can attack Kenny.
And we're committed to getting it done as fast as we can.
You have a card.
So, Miss in the red.
Hello, I'm Laura Kaiser. I'm the parent co-chair for Mercosip, and we have been actively engaged for almost 2 years now. We were told to get it together, and we were passed over to our surprise.
My mom and dad told me that years ago.
And so, anyway, we appreciate your coming tomorrow to see the situation on the ground. But I want to, we have a big question about what role BGS plays in evaluating school conditions for renovation. For example, in the master facility plan that came out in 2008, we were listed as unsatisfactory. And then in 2012, we were suddenly made good. And so what improvements were made to Mercer during that time to warrant this, change of status?
Yeah.
And to what extent do you take into account things that affect that we have 76 square feet per student, and it's getting smaller every year, and we are bursting at the seams, and it's the wear and tear on the building? I mean, how do you take that into account on your, and how often are those assessments really done?
Well, we're in the midst right now of doing a real bona fide facility condition assessment for the entire portfolio. The school's facility condition assessments has either just wound down or is about to. And that will be, in my tenure, the first time that we've ever had a comprehensive, real analysis of all of the systems in a building for each building in our portfolio, municipal, fire stations, everything. And so it's at that moment I don't mean to editorialize, but one of the things that frustrated me early on in my tenure is that a culture in government that tends to come from being in an underfunded world, which is facilities maintenance generally has been, going back decades and decades, of I'm not going to fix it till it breaks. And my philosophy is the only way you can get to where you want to go is by having defensible reasons for asking for more money and for then being responsive and doing the work. So it's been an ongoing process. We were able to argue for about $11 million more in facilities in year one. That was back in our first year of operations. We've got another 6 or 7 or 8. And each year we're starting to close the gap, which enables us to be more responsive to the buildings when they have, when things need to be replaced or fixed or whatever. So in answer to your question, which was one of the more detailed questions that I've received in a while, there's an awful lot in there. I don't know how the 2008 Master Facility Plan Assessment was conducted. I don't know to what degree it was a cursory analysis. Somebody walked through and said, poor. Well, relative to what? What we're doing right now is the first assessment that's looking at everything across the board. And then, well, I think that fully answering your question, frankly, is going to take a bit more time because it's part of a calculus that involves looking at everything. I don't know if I can give you a satisfactory answer right now because I can't do it in a vacuum without addressing all of the other buildings in the portfolio and things that the deputy mayor may be considering in DCPS. So I guess I might invite that we just have a bit more dialogue after this evening.
Okay.
Nice.
Look forward to showing you what we're talking about tomorrow.
I mean, I think it's very reports, frankly, and just if those are on file somewhere, and say what was seen in 2008 and then what was seen in 2012, so that we can all compare and have a baseline, understanding you're doing a more comprehensive.
Yeah,
Can I answer that question?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
So, to be just frank and honest, because it's just us, is that all of the majority of the schools are in a deplorable or were in some deplorable situation. Until the city administrator who held the position that Brian holds or the director holds now started to work on them, they all were suffering. And so what's happened is the city administrator chose Director Hanlon to now elevate the level of work that was done on his tenure. And so we can definitely provide the two reports, but what he's basically trying to say is we know it's bad, and we're trying to fix everything we can as fast as we can. And so that's why we're saying that merch definitely is in need. Whether we've been on the ground, and we know, I mean, not to every paint chip or crack, but we know it needs to be done, and that's why we're coming to help.
Well, may I just add
Sure.
No, so
Oh, sorry.
unfortunately I have to cut you off because we have to keep moving through our long agenda. Kenny, your email?
Yep, my email is KENNETH .diggs @dc.gov. And once you email me, I'll give you my cell phone number. Actually, I'm just giving you my cell phone number now. It's 202-580-93. Now, these are the rules on my cell phone. You can call me from 7 to 11 p.m., 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. If you call me at 11:01, you have to talk to my wife and tell her why it is so important that you speak to me. The only day that you cannot call me is Thanksgiving Day. Christmas, New Year's, I'm available. So my number is 202-580-9361.
Thank you. So thank you both for coming. If you are going to try to talk to them, can you please go towards the
All
inside?
go out, because we can hear you.
Great,
Thank you.
thanks. All right, so next up is Sheridan School request to increase enrollment by 4 students, and basically right now every 10 years the zoning Board of Zoning Adjustment reviews this plan, and they want to make it so the BZA does not need to review it every 10 years. So is there anyone from Sheridan School here? Okay, come on up. And then if you are here to speak about Sheridan School, can you raise your hand real quick so I can get a sense? 1, 2. No, there's, okay. 1 or 2 people. Okay, so, what? Hey, pretty good. So, if you want to just introduce yourself, maybe give a 2-minute summary of what it is.
Okay. Hey everybody, it's my first ANC meeting, and I will not be giving out my cell phone. My name is Mike Stoll. I am the Director of Finance and Administration at the Sheridan School. I brought along a couple folks for backup. We've got Jamie Milanovic. She has helped us work on our application, done our traffic study. And we have Pat Brown over here, who was our legal counsel, who has been walking us through this process since it's the first time that most of us on staff have gone through this process. I'll make this pretty quick and easy. The reason we're here is because our 10-year BZA approval is expiring this year, so obviously we're required to be here. We're really asking for some pretty basic things. We want to maintain our current school enrollment. Our cap is currently at 226. We're asking for 4 more students to go to a maximum of 230, which is our current enrollment. We want to maintain our current camp operations, which is capped at the same number as our student enrollment. We're not asking for any expansion of the facility, no expansion of the playground. We are asking for the potential to renovate our playground, which was done in 2004 when we did a renovation. But that renovation would only include replacing the current turf and upgrading and updating the playground elements, swings, those type of things. We also have an updated traffic management plan, which Jamie can speak to if you have any questions on that. One thing that we actually hadn't talked about, but when we went to meet with the Office of Planning, I believe were the folks we met with, they suggested that we ask for no expiration, so a sort of a lifetime approval, which was sort of new to us. So we said, sort of sounds great to us. If we don't have to do this every 10 years, we're all for it. That being said, anything that we would do in terms of facility improvement, enrollment, anything else would trigger a BZA intervention and further feedback from you folks. So that's a quick summary.
That works.
All right.
So I guess basically what I did is when you filed your thing, there was a list of every property owner near school, so I sent everyone a letter just asking them for their thoughts. I heard from most of them actually, which is pretty good because I usually don't get such a good response. Okay. I was surprised. And basically, my feedback from them. This is not in my single member district, but since David Lowell is no longer the commissioner and Maliki is technically not sworn in, I've decided to adopt this since I live across the street, basically.
Okay.
So basically, the feedback I received is all sorts of different things. I know we've had our issues with parking and things like that, which are arguably not really part of this, technically. And we've discussed different things to do. And, there's been other sorts of issues here and there, little things, but, generally, at least my short time experience with you has been you've been generally responsive, which is good. I guess really the questions I asked the neighbors were, do you care if they increase the enrollment by 4, and what about getting rid of this 10-year limit? So basically, the feedback I got was kind of half and half. It was half the people were like 4 people, fine, and half the people were no. I think it's like by one person slightly tilted in favor of okay, 4 more students. That was the feedback I got, and then pretty much unanimously everyone did not like having the ANC support this permanent thing.
Sure.
And basically, I mean, to be honest with you, that's how we make sure you're complying with things, and who knows, maybe in 5 years you're gone and all 3 of you are gone and someone else not doing a good job.
Yeah.
So that's basically.
We didn't even know it was an option.
We don't
Someone
think it
suggested it. We thought it sounded great, so let's go for it.
So, I guess what I did is I drafted a resolution, which I'll share now, and assuming someone seconds it, the commissioners can discuss, and we'll ask people in the audience who are here to discuss.
Okay.
And then we can either modify it or vote on it or whatnot. So basically, the resolution just summarizes what your filing says. Basically says we have concerns with making this permanent, and that we reached out to the neighbors and spoke with them. And basically it's telling BZA 2 things. One, that the ANC does not, so the ANC opposes a request by Sheridan for a permanent special exception and requests that the BZA approves a special exception for a period of 10 years, which is what it's kind of been for a while. And then secondly, that we would support the 4 students. And then lastly, that myself or Maliki, once he's sworn in, can talk to them at a hearing if needed. So that's the resolution I've prepared based on talking with neighbors that I heard from prior to this meeting. So is there a second from me?
I'll second it.
So Karen seconded. So I guess what I'll do first is, do any commissioners have questions? I'll start with Bob. No. Steve?
I just have one thing I'd like to possibly modify,
Okay.
and that's in the first resolved.
Okay.
That reads, resolve further that ANC 3F should be, opposes the request by Sheridan for a permanent special exception, and requests that the BZA approves the special exception, including all existing conditions on the property. I would like to see it read, for a period of not more than 10 years, contingent on Sheridan coming into and remaining in compliance with all conditions. And the reason I said that is because we've heard that you're not always in compliance with all of the conditions.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I don't think that's necessarily, I would push back
You
on that a
might
little bit.
disagree, but
Sure.
some of the residents
That's fair.
have
That's fair.
expressed
Sure.
that as,
Okay.
So,
I don't know, it's a friendly amendment.
yeah, no, those sound good to me. So, that sounds good to modify that. So, do you have any questions for Sharon?
No, I do not.
Sally?
No.
Nolan?
Just one question. How many, what percentage of your students live in Ward 3?
I don't know, do we have that? Ward 3, percentage of our students in Ward 3?
Or even
No,
within the district? You know?
Gabby, do you remember that? I do have that, I don't remember off the top of my head, I apologize.
That's fine.
I wanna
You
say
weren't- I know
it's-
you weren't
it's-
prepared
it's-
yet.
It's north of 2/3. But I don't have the exact number, I apologize.
Well, actually, I do have a question. So,
Okay.
could you explain a little bit about the transportation study? I know a lot goes into that, and there have been some complaints at rush hour.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, just, can everyone hear me? We communicate fairly regularly with our parents in terms of what the proper traffic patterns are and to be good neighbors and follow signage, don't block driveways, et cetera, et cetera. We know that not all of our parents follow our guidance, unfortunately. We will continue to do that. We had a meeting at school, 2-3 weeks ago, and we heard our immediate neighbors' concerns. And after that meeting, I sent out another communication. We've done a video this year. We sent out stuff. So we continue to try and work on that. We know that's an issue.
Do you have people out there? I just don't notice
We
anybody.
have a police officer out there
Okay.
during pickup and drop-off.
Right.
We've had this discussion before. The police officer is moderately successful in terms of controlling traffic and changing behavior.
Yes.
This year, we've become a little bit more, a little stricter in terms of the officers writing tickets to get people's attentions, but we need to get the officers a little more focused as well at times.
Is this someone you hire?
Is this someone we hired? They're off duty?
They're off duty?
Yes, but they're in uniform. So
And they have authority to write tickets?
They do.
Yeah, she's there every morning.
Every morning and every afternoon.
And
I
ask them to come other times sometimes.
I mean, it is
I
a
know,
problem.
I've seen your
Absolutely.
People do not listen, and they're very rude sometimes.
Absolutely. When we talked about this specifically, we have in our intersections parents making U-turns, which is problematic and dangerous. So we are aware of it, and we will continue to hammer it home and hope that folks will comply.
Karen,
I
a
have
quick
I
question.
have two quickies. On your revised condition number 16, you said, as part of the application, the school will implement an updated traffic management plan after review by DDOT, Office of Planning, and ANC 3F. What about the neighbors? Because they were part of, there was a community liaison group.
In terms of updating the plan,
Yeah, I would like to make sure that the community liaison group is included in those that review your plan.
okay, well, we have not had that. I can certainly set that up.
Oh, because there was supposed to be a community liaison group.
Well, we had a meeting, but we don't have a liaison group. We have not discussed the traffic plan with the neighbors specifically. No.
Oh, because your original condition 16 included.
We talked about it last meeting, yeah, but I mean, we haven't had
Included
it.
them, yeah.
Well, wait, last meeting we included, but we haven't had a specific, are you referring to a specific meeting to talk about
No,
traffic
it says
management?
the original condition was said as
Well, we
plan
did-
described in finding of fact as may be amended after consultation with the community liaison group.
Well, we did, yeah, I thought you meant it was, I thought you were referring to a specific traffic community liaison group, which we have not had.
No,
We
but
did have the
I just want to
conversation.
make sure that they're included, not just.
Yeah, we did
ANC
talk about
3F.
this at our last meeting. This is where I wasn't aware of the U-turns and the intersections occurring. So we did talk about that at our last meeting that we had at school a couple weeks ago.
Now, my other one is condition number 18.
Mm-hmm.
The school is not proposing any construction which would require a construction management agreement. The proposed management of the renovation of the existing playground does not appear to warrant this type of agreement, and therefore the applicant requests elimination of this condition. I think my only concern there is the neighbors there should be some type of construction agreement depending on trucks coming, parking, even for just a construction for a playground. You want to make sure the neighborhood is covered, but the deliveries, et cetera.
Right.
So I would request that not be eliminated, but maybe revised.
Okay. We don't have anything currently planned. This is more long-term.
Well, it says proposed renovation.
I
We're
hear you.
talking 10 years out possibly.
Yeah, I hear you. You're right.
So I don't want to see something just eliminated. Even construction in the school or renovation in the school could impact the neighborhood with trucks, depending on what you do over the next 10 years. With trucks coming, noise, hours of operation, the whole. So I would rather not see some of that eliminated. I know Pat's probably going to disagree with me and fight it at the BZA.
We've never disagreed, Pat.
Pat and I go.
I understand your point.
We go way back.
Okay. Okay. I have one.
Okay.
So, audience members who want to speak on this, if you wish to speak, feel free to come on up to the microphone. That's the easiest way.
Thank you. My name is Scott Schechter. I live across the street from the school at Alton Place, 3627. I've owned the home there for 16 years, which preceded the issuance of the current BZA order. I will urge the ANC to revise the resolution so that the renewed order does not exceed 5 years, not 10. The reason for that is that if I can take you back 10 years, the relationship between the school and the neighborhood was somewhat frayed, which led to the creation of those 18 or 19 conditions that are embodied in that order. Those were highly negotiated. They were presented to the ANC 11 years ago as an agreement. And for better or worse, we're not in the same posture now. But since that order was issued, I have personally observed, as recently as earlier this month, repeated violations of those conditions. Some of those conditions are now being proposed for elimination. I think you hit the nail on the head that to have an oversight tool, an indefinite BZA order will remove significant leverage from the community, the school's neighbors, to oversee compliance. And for that matter, 10 years, an order that lasts 10 years strikes me as, given the history of compliance and non-compliance over the last 10 years, seems to be an excessive amount of time. So I urge the board to reduce that resolution if it's consistent with your process.
Okay.
The second point is goes to the construction management plan, which was just discussed. One of the examples that occurred over the last 10 years was after the order was issued, the school undertook a construction project which was not contemplated or specifically addressed in the prior order. That was the installation of some solar panels on the roof.
Okay.
The construction of those solar panels required bringing in heavy construction cranes, workers, numerous trucks. I live immediately across the street. I received no prior notice of that. I believe it was done in a summertime period. But what was lacking was any interaction of that construction project with the neighbors. So I, as an immediate neighbor, would object to the elimination of a condition that required consultation by the school with the neighbors on construction activities that don't necessarily require ANC approval. I'm not aware of any ANC approval of the construction of the solar panels, which is a wonderful thing to happen, but the consultation with the neighbors was missing.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments on Sheridan? Okay.
Say that after our meeting of a couple of weeks ago, it took about 10, 12 days, but some of my worries about lighting were addressed. And now some of the larger classrooms that are lit through the night have their shades drawn or partially drawn. This has been effective. But I wonder if I can ask about a more accurate traffic plan. Surveying the parents brought, for example, the result that about 6 families had cars parked on the Yuma Street side of the school during the pickup time. The more accurate number would be 30 cars from the school alone. Perhaps if the survey were done in person a few days of the week, not necessarily the Wednesday that it was done. Wednesday's an early dismissal day. But if it were done Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday, the person observing might notice the accurate number of parents who park, go over to pick up their kids, return with them to the cars. This has been a regular occurrence. Also, I wonder how much traffic and parking is affected by the growing numbers. This will be the 3rd time since the building, what can I say, approved it will be the third time in the growth in the cap. I wonder what the caps mean, because every few years there's a request for further growth.
So I think I can answer the question in terms of what the increase in the cap will mean in terms of how much traffic is generated by the school. When we did a traffic study back in 2003 with the prior BZA approval, we actually went out, we counted the number of cars that were coming to and from the school on Yuma Place on on Yuma Street, on 36th Street, on Alton Place, and developed a trip generation rate based on those traffic counts. So using those rates and looking at an increase of 4 students, and we also factored in the current BZA approval allows for a maximum of 60 faculty and staff. Currently, the school's at 55, I believe, faculty and staff. So if you look at 5 additional faculty and staff, and you look at 4 additional students, the increased trip generation would be 9 additional trips in the morning, and that includes vehicles coming to the school and also leaving the school, and 8 additional trips in the afternoon peak. Again, that's trips coming to the school and from the school. So it's a very modest increase in the number of trips, and also keep in mind, as Mike indicated, the school is currently operating with those 4 extra students. So in terms of what you're seeing there today, you're not going to see all of those 9 trips and all of those 8 trips. So it's a very modest increase that we think can be handled with the pickup drop-off operation that's currently in place. We are keeping all of the transportation management strategies from the original order, and we've added a couple of more based on our observations of the school and also based on some recommendations that we heard at the community meeting a couple of weeks ago, and those are in the packet that you received.
Great. Thanks. So I think at this point, I'm going to modify the resolution slightly based on his suggestion. I'm inclined to ask for 5 years and see what happens. I don't think it's...
Mr. Chairman, can I interject?
Yeah.
5 years in the world of private school approvals is I think, unrealistically short, particularly in a case where you have status quo application. I think 10 years is really, I think, the minimum or that you could expect reasonably for the board to impose. But going back to whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years or permanent, the minute there's any event that changes the status quo, whether it's an addition to the building, students, faculty, anything, it's automatically basically terminates your approval and you come back into the process. So I think balancing that self-policing effect with what's reasonable, I think a 10-year period, one, is likely to be approved by the BZA, and two, appropriate to the circumstances, particularly since we're not launching into any great new endeavor here. If we were looking at a 20% increase in students, a 10% increase in faculty, a building addition, and looking forward into somewhat uncharted territory, I think there might be a better case for 5 years. But since we're really maintaining the status quo, I think a 10-year period is more appropriate.
I appreciate. I agree that they will probably, who knows, probably not agree to 5 years. I guess probably the simplest thing to do is
5 years is fine. We were just told that you're not in compliance now.
I said I disagree with that. So.
How about if we say
It's
between?
7.
How about if we say between 5 and 10 years,
Okay.
and let the BZA come up with a number?
No, go for 10.
Fine. Let's say 5 to 10.
5 to 10 years. Yeah.
All right. So, given that slight change, let's vote.
I have one other.
Yes.
This might be not a question. looking at your condition number 9, the applicant shall maintain a continuing community liaison group in cooperation with Advisory Neighborhood Commission 3F as described in finding of fact number 16.
Yep, we do that.
So I just looked at what finding of fact number 16 is. Do you meet at least 4 times a year and send out notices?
I send out a notice at the beginning of every year per the agreement that tells when we're going to have events with people over 50 and off times. I give out 4 dates a year when we can meet and at what time. No one has taken me up generally on those dates. I say, since there's been so little turnout, I provide my email in there and say, if you'd love to either meet during our regular scheduled time or meet at any other time, please contact me.
Okay.
No one takes me up on it.
I guess what I'm asking the community is, do you want this community liaison group to meet 4 times a year, or who's on it? Is it neighbors within 200 feet, or, you know?
Yes, the same mailing list we use to.
I mean, are you on the community liaison group?
I attended a number of meetings. Meetings were scheduled for the first several years after the BZA order was issued. I'm not aware that they've been offered in the last many years, over 6 years. I think that may be a function of the director of the school who we negotiated the original plan with and who we met with, the communities we met with on a regular basis, not being at the school anymore, business director changing, players changing since the time that the original. That's completely untrue, by the way.
I would like to suggest something, if I may. And Pat, Mr. Brown, I should call you. I think you can rewrite this, because we don't know what finding of fact number 16 is actually going to be in the current upcoming case. I would like to see this a little bit stronger, that you would actually incorporate the wording in there, that a community liaison group be formed, that they meet at least 4 times a year, you know, whatever. Yeah, I think you know what I'm getting at.
I understand, but I think what has transpired is that because we've had an ongoing situation, which I think there's been a relatively high level of confidence and non-complaint, that Mr. Stoll, who's been around for, 6 years now?
7 years.
Has been sending the notices, giving information, making himself available for the meetings, and there hasn't been a whole hue and cry to have the meetings. I think we should start with, we shouldn't have meetings just to have meetings, but we should put in place a system of notification, and there's certain things that we have to and will continue to notify the community about as far as events and scheduling, and then set up a process where if a meeting is needed, and basically the people who are on the mailing list, the neighbors, either mail or electronically, can request a meeting. And at that point, then the application becomes for the school to schedule a meeting, advise the ANC.
Yeah.
And
Can you put that into writing then? Because I'm concerned that this is referencing, you know, finding a fact from a previous case. But would you just, describe, if you could do that?
A nice thing that came out of our meeting, actually, is we started an email group, which we hadn't had before, which allows me to, I know we don't
That's
have the
fine.
entire neighborhood on, but I'm just
You know,
saying,
I just-
allows us to
About a
communicate.
Yahoo group, a listserv.
I just want to make
for the
sure that
community.
there's a process in place, which this doesn't really address.
Yeah, there's a
I mean,
process.
are we notified?
Okay.
The ANC?
No, we haven't
I
been.
haven't been, but now
we
I
should
am.
be
so
notified.
it's
I
a
haven't
start.
seen anything, but I've only been on this a year. So.
No, but I haven't seen anything, and I've been on it a little bit longer.
I send the email out
I
every.
know,
I
send a
don't
letter
know.
every
It
September.
doesn't. I mean, at this
It doesn't
point, it
matter.
doesn't matter
I
today.
think
The
you, I think
second,
you understand what I'm looking for.
I'm now on your mailing list, so
There you go.
that's,
but I
that's
think,
good.
you know,
And-
Mr.
and I do get your annual things.
I think
so.
Mr. Brown understands what I'm looking for in the way of a condition. And
Okay.
can write it in.
And we have better technology than we had 10 years ago.
Right.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but, you know,
Or
this
7.
Okay.
gentleman might not be there in 10 years either. That's why, you know, I want to make sure there's a process.
Absolutely.
I hope not to be here.
Well, that's,
Okay.
you know,
So let's vote on the modified
So how we're
resolution.
doing
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye. 5-0-0. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Next up, Joe is going to talk to us about 2800 block of Davenport and his and neighbors' ideas to improve pedestrian and traffic safety.
And some of those neighbors are here, by the way.
Okay.
Just raise your hands.
What?
Great.
Some of the neighbors from the block are here.
Good. So, Joe, if you want to give me like the super fast 3-minute overview of what's going on.
In 2.5.
Got it.
So thank you for agreeing to talk about the 2800 block. We're here to talk about.
Tell them to go outside.
Sheridan, Mike, everyone, can you speak outside?
Close to the lobby.
Close to the lobby,
Thanks.
please.
Okay, sorry, Joe.
No worries.
I need a sign up. Oh, I forgot the.
It's actually nice to follow these two, because the first one's about community and the second one's about compliance, and that's what we're here to talk about specifically. The 2800 block is a very narrow block at the end of Davenport Street between Linnean and Broad Branch, and it's very windy, very narrow. People speed through it. In fact, DDOT's Broad Branch study showed 3,200 cars a day take that road, and it was never designed that. It was actually rated by DDOT as the lowest possible F. So what we seek to do is, first we met as a community. Our block met and we came up with our asks. Then we went out to MPD, Mary Chay's office, DDOT, and we spoke with Mary Beth, who's not here tonight, and we came up with 3 tangible things that we can get now because of the various agencies that we've spoken to say that these things are possible now. And basically it comes down to 3 things. The first is we'd like to put a speed camera on Davenport going east in the evening because people speed down there, and we basically just want compliance. And in talking with MPD, when they do put people down there, they're constantly catching people for speeding, constantly. It's just a continuous pulling people over. So we basically want to put the block in compliance. Secondly, we've worked with Mr. Cheeks at DDOT to put in a walking path on there. It's not going to be a full sidewalk, but we'll take what we can get. We want to make it safe not only for the members of our block, but the people that use our block to get to the park and up. And more and more families are actually moving in, so there's going to be more and more kids walking ultimately up to Merch, too, over time. And lastly, we want the cleanup and the repair of the guardrails. And we've been talking to the U.S. Fine Arts and NPS. And when that repair happens, we just want it to be in compliance with them and hand in hand with them. Those are our 3 asks, and we think we can get it done. We just need, essentially, the support of the ANC.
Great, thanks, Joe. So I'll just quickly introduce this resolution. So Mary Beth has been working with you. I think Sally's been working with you a bit. Mary Beth's not here, so I talked to her and she said, let's try to introduce a resolution. I've talked to you. I haven't talked to the other neighbors, but based on my understanding, this what you've presented. And
there's no opposition to our block.
This is generally the gist of what people want. So I drafted a resolution that you helped me draft, so I appreciate that. Make my life easy. Basically, I said residents of Davenport have approached us concerned with safety of pedestrians and drivers. They have concerns for the kids, elderly, walkers, cyclists, drivers, people pulling out of their driveways, things like that. You've asked us to try to get MPD to install a traffic camera. You want installation of this asphalt pathing curb on your block, and then you kind of explained what it is. It's the length of the block on the north side, 3-inch curb, a few other things. And then lastly, you've asked to replace a guardrail, and preferably wood, if not rust-colored, not silver. And then I've basically said the ANC, my resolution says the ANC requests and supports MPD installing a traffic camera. ANC supports this path and curb, and we support the wooden guardrail. So that is the gist of my resolution. Is there a second for that at all? Seconded by Bob. So I think at this point, I'll open up to questions or discussion from the commissioners. I mean, my personal view is, it seems like unless someone's here to oppose all this stuff, based on my understanding, this is what the neighbors wish. It doesn't, honestly, to me, seem offensive.
Actually,
Nah.
I think the commissioners are at the, don't we get an opportunity first?
Yeah, we do.
Well, Mary Che's office can jump in.
Councilmember asked me to tell you guys that, from
So
our
no
understanding
is the answer.
with her response, CDOT, that they are planning to go ahead with the walking path and the guardrail replacement as soon as the weather allows.
Excuse me, not without ANC approval.
Of course without it.
Yes.
Of course without it.
They can do whatever.
They can do whatever they
Yeah,
want.
We don't have a veto.
but it would-
So we don't.
Per my conversation with Bill, Paul Hoffman.
But she asked me to
Cool.
according to her understanding, that this would be done.
So that's good.
That's
so
good.
We were
That's
we are
fantastic.
hopefully supplementing that.
Yes.
Um,
I just have one correction.
so I guess hold on a second. So generally, none of this. I mean, this all seems to me reasonable and innocuous, frankly. And since everyone's in favor of these three things, I don't personally have a problem with any of these. I can't guarantee you're getting a speed camera. I've been working on Van Ness Street for a speed camera for 4 years now.
Shouldn't
I don't know. So we'll try.
Speed camera's MPD anyway.
MPD. I'll send it to MPD, but it's entirely.
MPD?
Metropolitan Police Department.
Yes, and, well, so that was actually going to be my question. I've been interacting with Lisa Sutton from DDOT on installation of. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So she works. She's the
fair
non-police
enough.
officer that runs that. So basically, we put in requests for cameras and kind of like merge school and schools. There's some kind of magical list somewhere.
When we spoke with him, it's about
Yeah.
trying to get to the top of the top of the queue. So the more we can build coalitions on our block in the neighborhood in the ANC, we're just trying to raise awareness that this might be something that they need to pay a little closer attention to.
Yeah.
So we understand it's not going to happen tomorrow.
We would love your block of residents to get the block above you
love to. We'd
to
love to
get
fix
a
all the
sidewalk, so we have a connection all the way.
Actually, Marlene Berlin, who's a big advocate, wrote an article.
Yes,
about it,
just
and
recently.
We had a couple postings and emails about exactly that.
Yes,
So we
that would be
this is
great.
The beginning of
Hopefully
moving
that
up
would
the block,
be
moving
good.
around,
Position
so-
here, yes.
That'd be good. So I guess, do any commissioners have questions about these three requests or comments, I guess?
I
I'll
just
start
would like
with
you-
Bob.
oh, okay.
No for me.
I would just
Karen.
like you to take this word out.
What
In
word?
stone?
Consistent with requirements imposed by the Commission on residents retaining walls in that area, the residents wish that any retaining wall be faced with, it should say with
Oh,
stone.
stone. Okay, so I will delete the in.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not grammatically
Yeah,
correct.
right.
Okay.
You
know me, I'm gonna
Yes.
get, you know.
Do you have anything else, Karen?
I just had one quickie. Have you looked at other things to slow down traffic?
Oh, we have. And
You know, like these little stupid roundabouts and
we've had lots of discussions,
curbouts
and we want to make it part of a larger community discussion. So our list actually is longer than this,
Yes.
and we have lots of great ideas, but we're hoping to bring in the Forest Hills community as a whole as some of the bigger.
Okay.
I would like to commend you on that, because I live at the other end of Davenport, which everyone knows. And it's a very different terrain, but it's got the same type of issues. Things have changed over the years. I know you're a fairly newcomer, but some people have lived there a very long time. I've lived there 21 years. There you go, you got me beat. There have been many studies done of that. As a matter of fact, Jane Solomon couldn't find the study that was done maybe 10 years ago.
It was done in August, by the way.
No.
That
No,
one.
this one, but the safety
There have been
path.
more than one.
But they've done one about 10 years ago. And actually, that was a fairly good study that I would like, I think the community as a whole, and I commend you for saying you want to reach out to the community, because it's not just Davenport or Brandywine. It does affect the whole community, all of us. Whether we can get in, we can get out, people coming through. So it's a much bigger fish to fry. But this is a step in the right direction.
Manoli?
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think next month we may look to take up something related to some of the issues further up, further north along Linney and Broad Branch, 34th and Fessenden. And potentially, I still am a little bit fuzzy on how this doesn't necessarily require a traffic calming petition. I'm pleased that it does not, assuming that the work is going to get done if council member, Shay's staff member is true to her word. So we're hoping that we get the same sort of support for further actions further north along Linean and same sorts of issues in terms of commuters using the streets that are not sufficient. Well, we can talk to you about it later. Commuters using streets that are not really sufficient for the purposes that they're looking for.
That's the issue that we're concerned with. This is the beginning of that.
So we appreciate the council member support in this, and we look forward to future support and related endeavors on similar kinds of issues.
I'll try to get you the old report. I think there's some good things in there.
Does anyone from the audience have anything against this? Anyone wish to add anything quickly for it?
You want to put their block on?
Okay, let's vote on this. All in favor of this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
5-0-0 passes.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, next up, discussion resolution regarding the continued use of a accessory parking lot to the Burger King on Connecticut Avenue. So this is once again in Malachi's new area, but he's not sworn in, so I'm handling it. Basically, the Burger King. Is there anyone from Burger King here? Yep, welcome. So, do you want to explain what you're asking for?
Sure, I'll be
All right.
very brief. Our client
Can you
has-
introduce yourself too?
Sure. Nicola Harrison and Karina Segar from Troutman Sanders. So our client has applied for a special exception for continued use of the parking lot accessory to the Burger King on Connecticut. That's what it's being used for right now, and they've asked for a 5-year extension for the same use.
It's a 3-year extension.
Oh.
The previous one was 3 years.
Correct, but I think we've
You're
requested
asking for 5, yeah.
Yes.
Well, no, it was 3 years. 9 through 12 was the prior
Yeah.
one. They're asking for 5. Okay. Okay. So that's basically the parking lot behind the Burger King, which is used for other things.
By the car wash.
Car wash, dumpster storage, which is not supposed to, things like that. So basically, I started drafting a resolution, and after a lot of informal discussion with a lot of people, I went over there and spent time there this weekend and investigated further. Basically, I drafted this up yesterday, so I'll kind of explain it. So we have to file a form with BZA, and basically that form will refer to this letter. Basically, the gist of what I am writing here is that we discussed this at the meeting. The applicant is using this parking lot as an accessory parking lot, which expired in 2012. We don't like that since it's now 2014. I'm also actually going to ask the BZA to oppose allowing it to be used as a parking lot for 3 reasons. First of all, the applicant doesn't comply with the order, hasn't, continues not to today. I know that we've had discussions, I haven't personally, but I believe Karen and others have discussed with Burger King management, and they don't seem to care. And basically, so I'll go through those issues. Second reason would be that basically looking at the property today, it doesn't meet the requirements under the zoning regs to be used as a parking lot, since it's not being used as a parking lot partially. And then lastly, our general, hey, this is a parking lot, let's do something better than that. This is Van Ness 2014, not Van Ness 1982, or whenever you started using it, 59. So basically, non-compliance with the order. I went over and looked at your order. First of all, it expired in 2012, which you know, that's why you're renewing it. Secondly, the BZA ordered you not to put dumpsters on the property. The dumpsters are there. I think one time we complained they moved it for a day. They're still there. The BZA specifically said don't put the dumpsters there. Secondly, the BZA says you're supposed to have 2 garbage cans. You only have 1. Third, ANC is supposed to have a person you're supposed to contact. I don't know who that is. I've never heard from Burger King ever in my 2 years as your commissioner.
And not in the last 10 years.
And then David Lowe was your commissioner. I checked with him. He's never heard. I don't get the annual report of compliance. The striping and maintenance of the parking lot is not good. There's potholes and the stripes are kind of fading. And you are obligated to have exit and entrance arrows which do not exist. And I've taken photos, so it's clear. Then we're opposing it because I don't think it actually meets the requirements of zoning regulations. So basically, the zoning regulations require that you only use it as a parking lot or things that a parking lot can be used for. I went over this weekend and it's being used as a car wash. So people are drying car washes and stationing there. That's not actually even the Burger King. I mean, that's the neighbor that just uses it as a place to dry cars off. So that's not, in my view, consistent with the use of the parking lots. And then secondly, you're putting dumpsters on there, which the BZA told you 3 years ago, and I think 3 years before that, don't put the dumpsters there, but they're still there. And then lastly, our general comment of this is 2014, let's do something different than having a Burger King with a drive-through there. And also, our ANC is very concerned with the runoff into Soapstone Valley. So one of your neighbors, Mid-Cities, who's where the new bakery will be, we asked the Board of Zoning to have them repave it as permeable surface so the water doesn't get run off into the creek, and BZA actually agreed with us, so that was good. So we're kind of asking for the same thing there. That being said, if the BZA says no ANC, we still think it can be used as a parking lot. We're basically just asking that all the previous conditions be reinstated. We would also like to see pervious paving installed. We'd like to see a bike rack. Maybe someone wants to bike to the Burger King to burn off their chicken nuggets. We also want to see a few more shrubs installed. And then we've asked they consider maybe putting a zip car spot in since it's a big parking lot that's usually empty. And then the normal keep it free of garbage, which they actually appear to have been doing. And also we've asked that you fill in your potholes. So, and then lastly, I've authorized myself or Maliki to speak at the hearing. So that's the gist of it. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Karen, thank you. Okay, so now it's a live resolution. So I guess so that's kind of what I drafted. I don't know, I'd like to see a little more. And I mean, I've been back there many times getting my car washed, and the pothole's been there for 3 years. It's huge. I'm waiting to damage my car so I can sue you, but it'll be fun, but I haven't yet. But really, I mean, the garbage cans aren't supposed to be there. They've been there for at least the 4 years I've lived here.
They've been there forever.
And BZA told you not to put them there. The
It's a
ANC,
violation of zoning.
the ANC hasn't filed a complaint. Anyone could file a complaint. Maybe I'll file a complaint. I don't know.
Let's see what happens here.
But that's the gist of it. So I'll turn it over to Bob and work our way down for comments, questions. You have anything?
I'm fine with this.
Okay. Aaron?
I'm fine with it, but I would like to add one other condition that I just discovered.
Okay.
ADA requires, when you have a parking lot of 1 space to 25 spaces,
Yeah.
ADA requires that 1 space be designated as a van-accessible parking space with a minimum 96-inch wide access aisle. We do not have that in this parking lot. And when it gets restriped, it has to be. That's an ADA requirement.
Okay, so I think,
Um,
how about we just put as condition, new condition 9.
Yeah, no, I wrote it out here for you.
Parking lot is I'd rather not even get specifics because in case the ADA changes, have it just compliance
just
with
make it
ADA.
compliant with
Okay.
ADA.
But it has to be compliant with the van accessible.
regulations.
There's a big difference between ADA compliant and accessible.
Okay.
Anything that was constructed before the ADA went into effect is actually ADA compliant. It's any new construction, so new striping. So
I've got it here, it's got it.
we actually want to say,
How about compliant with current ADA?
I think it needs to
Would
say
that
what
be-
it says.
And accessible.
It's not accessible. It's very specific. And I've got it here, right from the Department of Justice. Total number of parking spaces provided. When you have 1 to 25, you must have at least one van-accessible parking space with a minimum 96-inch wide access
So
aisle.
reread this and we'll just add that.
just great.
So we'll add condition 1 space be designated as a van accessible parking space with a minimum 96-inch wide access aisle per ADA requirements. Okay. I'm taking this.
Now, my other thing,
Yep.
I've been on this commission for a while, and I have to be honest, tonight I gave Commissioner Tope all of your previous BZA orders going back to 1982 when the lot first became existent. And being honest, you haven't complied with any of them going back all those years. I don't know what it takes. But I was at the last hearing, I even testified at it, along with Commissioner Solomon. BZA specifically told you to remove the dumpster, that it was a violation of zoning. It never was removed. I mean, the striping, the potholes, I mean, all of it. You were told not to let the car wash use it. And I'd like an explanation as to why you never comply with anything you get. Or Burger King doesn't comply. It's supposed to be for customers only.
Okay. Sally, comments?
No,
questions?
I didn't, I asked a question,
Oh.
I didn't get an answer.
Well, I don't know that.
Yeah, why don't you guys comply?
Unfortunately, I don't have a ready answer for you. I'm happy to take this back and discuss it with my client and address that at the hearing, but I don't have a comprehensive answer.
Why
for
is
you
the
today.
client not here?
Well, they're represented.
They're represented,
but,
which is.
we're.
Conservative lawyers
Yes.
are here. That's
Well,
the same as you.
I think I'm just very disappointed that this has gone on now. This has gone on now since almost 1982 that you haven't complied with. And that to me is a big problem.
I understand. We'll relay that.
Sally, anything?
Well, I'd like maybe you write in somewhere in here about, which is excellent.
It's
Madam,
great,
thank
it's a
you.
great piece of work.
The sloped hillside,
Okay.
that is not maintained. Part of it's maintained. I know part of it's the Zips parking lot, but it's really bad. Huh?
Where the little shrubs are?
No, yeah, the hillside that goes up to the
To the house of the
the
boss.
houses. I have been told by Zips that they go out there every once in a while and supposedly clean it up. I would like to see.
Well, I mean, I guess the condition right now, which I haven't added, is a reason it says landscaping shall be maintained in a healthy, growing condition and in a neat and orderly appearance.
Right,
So-
but I'd like to say the trash be on a regular basis, be
It's supposed to be.
That's in there. It's
It's
supposed
in
to be
there.
whether or not it's occurring.
Okay,
It's
well,
already
it's
in
just
there.
not occurring.
Okay.
It's- Well, that's
Fair,
another
fair
reason,
enough.
Okay.
it's not occurring.
Fair
Okay.
enough. Okay. Cool. And then Manoli, anything?
I agree, it's a fine piece of work.
I think it was
Yeah.
great.
It's great.
I got
You did really good.
I got into a zone.
You got
The,
into a zone.
So then the alley between the lot directly behind the Burger King and this accessory lot is public space, though.
It is.
Wait a minute, I don't know, it's zoned R1B, it's zoned for residential.
So but the alley
alley.
between.
Oh, the
the
alley. Oh, the
That's
alley
the
is
alley
public
between
space.
is public space.
Yeah. Indeed, I actually paved part of it recently.
Okay.
Okay,
Anyone?
does your thing say it's R1B? Or does it just say R1?
Doesn't even.
It should say what it is.
Okay, I'll add that.
It should say that it's zoned R1B.
Okay, I'll add it. in an appropriate spot. Does anyone in the audience have anything about the Burger King? Okay. Let's vote on the slightly revised resolution with Karen's new language. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5-0-0. Thank you.
Sorry.
Next up, Great Streets Grant for Sushi Para. Is anyone from Sushi Para actually here?
I don't think so.
Has anyone talked to them?
The owner lives in Chicago.
I know that.
But I have not seen or talked to
So I
him.
reached out to Andrew Klein to see if he could connect us, but that did not pan out. And I would love to support whatever
I talked to.
they asked for. Do you know what it is?
Great Streets,
Okay.
Polina, and as David has talked to her also, I actually talked to her yesterday afternoon late. She could not give me any information on, it is not in their policy to give out any information until something is awarded. I just think everybody here needs to know that about this grant process. The first year was a pilot program. They do not have funding yet for this coming year, so they are not sure what will be funded or will not be funded.
Okay.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
I'd like to see us do a resolution in support of the Great Street application for Sushi Para and fill in the details once we get a hold of Andy, who's the owner in Chicago.
Oh,
I mean,
I can't wait till the next.
It
Wait
can't,
till
the
May.
problem is it can't, I got the letter like a
Oh.
week and a half ago saying we had 30 days, so it has to be
Okay.
this meeting. And the other problem is I don't know what it is. Like, what if he wants to,
Right.
I don't know,
And
build,
that's
a,
what
build,
I
a,
asked
build a
her.
neon billboard?
Right,
I don't know
and
what
I
want.
said, can you give us any idea? And she said, no.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a fallacy with the
You know, we could do one thing.
policy.
We can write a letter to the deputy mayor asking for an extension until our April 8th meeting.
Second.
I mean,
I
yeah,
think
we
we
can
should
do
do
that.
that.
That's fine.
Actually, is
Yeah.
April 8th within the 30 days?
Actually,
It depends on how they
I
do
don't
the
have
30
the letter.
days,
I don't have
whether
the
they
letter.
count weekends and holidays or just,
Oh, is it calendar days or business
well,
days?
see, different agencies do
I've
it
been
differently.
I guess let's vote on sending a letter for an extension. If I go home and find the letter and April 8th is in it, then
Then we're okay.
well, it doesn't matter. I guess I won't mail it or something.
Yeah, but I
Or I'll
would,
mail it anyway and they'll say, okay.
Well,
Yeah,
in
I
the
think-
letter, we should say why we want the extension, because we don't know what the,
no, I don't think we should say we don't
No?
know. I think we should say that we're meeting on April 8th and we would like an extension in order to, so that the applicant can come to our meeting or something like that. I don't think we should just say we don't know.
That's fine. So I think a
I
letter,
think you can fudge it.
a letter saying, we'll tell you on April 8th after our next meeting.
Yeah.
okay.
Hopefully that's fine. Please give us an extension. So
Because every agency does.
is there a
their-
second for that
I'll
motion?
say-
No, you made it.
I made it, I
I'll
can't second it.
All right. Is there a discussion?
Call for the question.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0. All right.
No, that was for
Sushi Para.
Sushi
grant.
Para.
Okay. Lastly,
That's
or
not last.
well, the last bigger issue is discussion and resolution of public space permit at the consulate. Is anyone here from the consulate? Okay. So this was Bob. I'll turn it over to you.
I'd like to turn this over to Karen, who actually drafted the resolution and actually spoke with the folks from Public Space and TDOT.
So
Okay.
Karen, can you tell us what they're applying for and give your
Okay,
resolution?
here's briefly the story. Evidently, the sign in front of the consulate in public space was never approved to begin with, not by the ANC or by the Public Space Committee. It was just installed. They got caught. There was an enforcement action. Consequently, they filed an application to do, quote, a minor modification of the sign, to just change the name from Archstone to AVA. However, a sign in public space is only supposed to be 42 inches tall, which translates basically to 3 feet 5 inches from grade. What they submitted to public space is not an accurate, the applicant checked off that it doesn't need to go to the Public Space Committee, which it does. And you're trying to pass the sign off as just this minor modification. And the photos that they submitted show the photo of the sign, and they show the sizing of the sign, but they didn't put the base that the sign is sitting on, and it's got to be from grade. So we actually have a sign that's like 5 feet 7 inches tall. It has advertising on it, which is not permitted. The sign in public space is only supposed to have an address. The square footage of the sign is supposed to be 40 feet. This is over 50 feet. It's supposed to have lettering of a certain size.
40 square feet.
Yeah, this is over 50. So basically, the resolution just, we didn't say that they got caught by a citation. But basically, the resolution, and I think everybody has read it, it basically does not approve a minor modification, because this is not a minor modification. And it basically says we don't approve the application as a minor modification, and believes the applicant should amend the application to accurately request approval for an overheight lighted monument sign in public space with advertising. And be it further resolved that should the Public Space Committee proceed on the application, then we will approve a sign of 3 feet 5 inches, 42 inches, which is what the Office of Planning also approved, including but not limited to no and that it comply with all regulations for signs in public space, including but not limited to advertising the size of the letters, and that the applicant seek an after-the-fact electrical permit, which they don't have either, even though the sign is lighted. Anyway, they applied for something that I think they're trying to skirt it through by just calling it a minor modification and name change. Commissioner Summersgill and I knew something was wrong when we first got the application.
It was odd.
It was odd that public space would take up just a change of name. And going beneath the surface, we found out it never had approval to begin with. And they never paid the fee on for having a sign in public space.
Okay.
I'd like to second.
So, is there a second? Thank you, Bob. All right. Discussion. Let's start with Manoli.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've been waiting all night to be first in the queue. So just clarification, I can picture the sign in my mind, but the advertising in question is the name of the owner of the, is that the?
The
You
name,
have a picture of it?
yeah, there is a picture. Let me just pull it out.
That's the advertisement, though? Is the name of the owner of the company?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, it's
That's it.
supposed to have an ad. Here's the sign. Wait a minute.
Well, as she gets it out, are there any other comments, Sally?
I want to see the picture before I I don't remember the whole sign.
That's a picture.
Yeah, but this one's a little better. They're showing it landscape, so you don't see the bottom, which is the base, the monument, the brick base.
Right.
And, these are the columns. And it says 2900 The Consulate Apartments.
Okay.
The only thing that's supposed to be,
But it's got this now leasing in it.
well, the down leasing is a different
Okay.
public space sign that's not supposed to be there.
Okay.
But that comes and goes. So the inspector probably didn't catch it the day he came out. But there's a brick base underneath here.
Okay.
And then you've got these pylons. It's 72 inches across. It's more than 5 feet high. If you go from grade, which is what the sign regulations require.
Okay, where's the advertisements?
A sign in public space is only supposed to have the address of a building. It should not be saying the consulate and AVA and everything else.
It shouldn't say the consulate apartment?
No, that can be on the awning above the building. There's two separate things there.
Half the signs in Connecticut Avenue.
I was going to say, I don't.
But they're not on public space.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
There's a difference. Public space is not allowed to have any
So
advertising.
why don't they move it off of public space?
That's something they
That'd be
can do. They
So
can do
why
that.
why don't we make that
But
recommendation?
that recommendation is made at the Public Space Committee meeting.
Because we're commenting on what they've applied for.
They've only applied for a minor modification to this sign.
I understand that, but I'm just seeing why.
They might not be able to because it's very close to the driveway.
Well, I can just say, if this is the only sign they have, just
It
having
isn't the only sign.
2950 doesn't.
It's not the only sign. If you look at the building, above the building, they have an awning. That awning can say the consulate.
In fact, I think it does.
I think it does.
I think that one does say it.
No, it doesn't.
No, the awning does?
The awning.
The awning, I don't think it does.
Okay, right.
But you know,
Have a
don't
vague memory.
confuse them. They can on the awning one, which is
So
not on.
what are we
public-
saying? They got to redo the sign?
They don't have, it's up
If
to
you
them.
redo the application.
It's up to them. They can redo their application and apply for this sign.
Sign.
Or they can move it off of public space, which I don't think they can, because of where the driveway is. But that's the decision, or public space could approve it. You never know what public space is
Okay.
gonna do.
Okay.
But public space, normally, if you go to their meetings enough, like I have, they'll ask them if they can move it off of public space. That's up to them.
Okay. I have nothing. Bob? Anyone in the community? Okay. Let's vote on this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0-0. There you go.
I know, it's Fox.
Let's just do opposed, right? Basically.
Well, you,
Wait a minute, who's gonna go? It's Commissioner Summersgill. I can put me in, but I'm not sure I'm gonna be here. Adam was-
I can definitely go. I don't know about
I'm
Maybe we
not
should
sure.
put
if
Malcolm
anyone
in
else
as
wants
well.
to.
I'll put me, but I'm not sure I'm gonna be in town. Does anybody else? Okay, Adam, you wanna put your name down just in case? No.
When is it?
The 27th of
Their
March.
awning actually just says 2950.
Yeah, see, I don't remember seeing the consulate.
well,
Yeah.
it might change, I guess.
Yeah, but they could change
here,
their
let's-
awning, too.
Let's just for
It's expensive.
accuracy revote adding in Karen as a speaker as well.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
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 5-0-0. Okay, thanks.
Bob, do you wanna send this in, or me, or who?
I'll send it in. It's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so
And do you want Adam's signature page?
Bob, Lenore, update.
Thank you. The Lenore Swim and Tennis Club applied for a new application to expand their membership, and the BZA modified that into a amendment to their prior permit, so that all of the previous restrictions were included. So that wasn't a necessary step to restate any of those. They just followed through because it was a change to a modification. So we got everything we wanted. They're very happy. So we're all good on that.
Good.
Great. All right, next, update on UDC zoning compliance complaints. So basically, UDC filed a response to our complaint from a while ago, last year. And it took the Office of Zoning Administration a long time, but finally, they responded back to UDC saying more or less they did not like UDC's answers or prove to us what you're saying you complied with, you actually did or did not. So they had until February 3rd, 2014 to respond to a whole 10-page document of questions. And the zoning administrator says it'll take them probably a couple months to go through it again, but hopefully at some point later this year, we'll reach some point showing whether or not UDC complied, which we think they have not. So that's kind of the status. It's been slowly moving, but I'm pleased that they're doing it seriously and are reviewing things. So that's good. Next up is an update on the website. So I met with our web designer. We should have we're moving the data from the current site to the new site. need to update a couple photos and things like that, bios, a couple other things. But hopefully, end of this week, I'll have something for the commissioners to look at and kind of look
Comment on.
and fix typos or whatever, and then we'll hopefully give it to the public, make it live later this month.
Can I make a recommendation to that website?
Yep.
Can we put our final resolutions versus the ones we are working with in the meeting on the website? And also, can the commissioner who is doing the final resolution send it to all commissioners so we know who's being sent the resolution? What agencies are being, I mean, I've been for here a year, and I cannot keep track. I mean, I have not one final, the couple I've done, to see who's received those submittals. And I do have some people call or write me and ask about the resolution, and I have to go back and try to find it, and I can't.
Yeah, so I mean, what I've been doing since I've been chair, which is basically last year, anytime I sign something, I PDF it. I've been uploading it. So,
okay, I just
final
haven't
resolution
seen it.
should be up there, generally speaking. If they're not, tell me which ones are missing. But
Okay.
when I've been signing things, I scan them and put them
Well,
up.
I mean, we have 3 or 4
Prior to when I was chair, I worked through it. I sent a lot of people emails asking for stuff.
Well, can we
I'm
just
working on it.
send also the commit, because I personally have a file that I try to, computer file that I try to
Yeah,
keep
no,
them
I
in
think
so that I could just look
Sure,
them up.
Sure,
Oh,
that's fine.
okay.
We can circulate.
I mean, I know I sent
Sounds
mine
like a
around to
job for
everybody.
the secretary.
Yep.
It does sound like a job.
Yes,
for a
it does.
secretary.
You know what?
Thanks,
I
Mom.
have to be honest, if it's on the website, you don't need to send them to me. I don't need a whole other stack of papers.
That's fine. I mean,
Well,
I
that's
think
fine.
we
Well,
have. We
that's
can
you.
just send it to our email and you can delete it. It's
Yeah,
all
right.
Easy.
I mean, I know Mary Beth would like it too.
Okay.
So,
I'm only going to say
that would be
Um,
great if we can do that.
You got it. February 2014 minutes. Bob circulated minutes. I'll make a motion to approve those minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second,
That's right.
with changes.
We'll give it. We'll
I,
give
I
it.
got both of your changes.
We'll give it to
I
Manoli.
just noticed that VZ
So
is spelled wrong.
comment.
What's
VZ, it's VEAZEY.
Oh, sorry.
Priniatakis, Priniot.
I will correct
His
that.
name.
I've already corrected your name.
Okay.
And you made those corrections I did,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Any other corrections or comments?
No.
All right, let's vote on this. All in favor, say aye.
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 Let's get a
Okay.
secretary.
I voted
Let's
for
get a
the
second.
5-0-0. April meeting, I would like to propose April 8th, which the people that responded to me said it was fine because our original meeting is on Passover and spring break.
Actually, I responded it was okay, but I floated, why is it so early?
I asked the same question.
And I recommended we look at the 22nd or 29th, because it's like 6 weeks to the May
I said the
meeting.
same thing.
I don't understand why we're, okay, so the 15th is not good just because Passover starts on the 14th?
Yeah, and it's the 15th, yeah,
Okay.
unless yours are early.
And spring break.
So.
Why are we concerned about DCPS spring break?
Because
Maximize
some
community
parents-
participation.
And some
but
parents on
he's
our
gonna be
commission
gone.
won't be here.
But Mary Beth isn't here tonight. I mean, you know, people
Yeah.
do go away. I don't think we should change a meeting for one commissioner, or not have a
And I'm
meeting.
not sure.
I don't think that was the proposal. The proposal was to change it due to Passover.
The
But I think
Passover was the
what- I think a
general.
few
I was
of us-
giving a second reason.
I think a
Maybe.
few of us feel that April 8th is too soon.
I
It's 2
agree.
weeks after this meeting.
Right.
And 6 weeks to our next
I don't
meeting.
have time.
And if the only issue is DCPS spring break,
No, that's
There
not,
are
that's
other
not,
dates.
that's not an issue. Well,
there are other dates, as Sally said.
I mean, the 22nd
You've
is
got,
only
wait a minute, you've also got the 16th and
16th or
17th
17th.
of May, and then you've got,
April.
April,
No, then
April,
you-
April.
so
Yeah.
right now we have 3 items for an April 8th meeting to discuss right now. The second, maybe more. That's why I figured it seemed reasonable to have one. We have stuff to do. It's not like we're going to sit twiddling our thumbs. So,
Should have a happy hour that evening.
I mean, look,
That
if
sounds
something
great.
urgent comes up, I guess we could have another meeting in that 6-week period, but right now, I have nothing.
How
in
long
May.
is Passover?
Well, 2 important days. Monday,
Two
Tuesday.
important days.
It's
Monday
Monday
and
and Tuesday,
Tuesday.
basically.
Could we meet on Wednesday, the 16th? Except that's still during
I
spring break.
think Malachi could not, and I think it would be nice of him to attend a meeting.
I think he could have gotten sworn in.
Well, he'll get
Okay,
sworn
what
in
about the
before then.
17th? Was he going to be gone that week? You're going to be gone that whole week.
No, I can't. 17th, the following week?
Yes.
Yes, he's going to be gone. Manoli, you're going to be gone this
Thursday.
week, right?
What about the 22nd?
Hope you go someplace fun.
No, because we have to get first and before the 22nd. Public space has to be in by.
So what are we trying to get done
Public space, though,
before?
Adam, it eliminates weekends and holidays.
No, but the deadline, because his hearing is April 24th. We can't send it in April 22nd.
Who is? Who's he?
I brought them to the
I mean, we
hearings.
could, but I'd rather follow their 7-day
Read first.
thing.
Oh,
Rather
I
follow the
mean,
rules.
you can do that, but they accepted at the meeting.
They do.
So what day are you proposing? 'Cause I'm
I said
proposing
this the 22nd. That
22nd.
Yeah, that means
Well,
Manoli's
then-
back. It's a beautification day. It's Earth Day.
You know, I can live with the 18th. I can live with the 8th. But I also
18th,
think, no,
that's
the
a-
8th, I said. But I'm concerned about what might come in, that we all of a sudden have 6 weeks in between.
Well, then we'll have a meeting if something comes
Yeah, but
up.
I don't think we need to have so many special meetings. That's the problem.
Well, we've not had any, so
No,
if
but
we
I'm
need
just-
one, we'll have one,
Well,
but
we've had
I don't.
3 extra last
We had three extra last year.
If we have to have one, we'll have a quick one, but, it's 22nd. Manoli is 22nd work for you?
Yes.
Sally?
As far as I know, I can't, I can't
Works
predict.
for me. You good for 22nd?
Sure.
I don't remember what the other said, but that's a quorum, so fine. 22nd? Okay.
Right.
Perfect. I will hopefully get this moved. Otherwise, we'll figure something out.
I can do the 8th also. I mean, it's not.
22nd's good.
I can check with. I'll
No,
check
it's,
with
I mean, we should be fine. So
Shirley.
22nd.
I'll check with Shirley tomorrow.
Perfect. 22nd is our next meeting. So can you tell Chris I changed it to the 22nd? Because I told him the 8th earlier today.
I have 2 things that I forgot to ask, but they've been internal.
No, I have
No,
another
so she
agenda
has
item.
Oh, you
something
got
quick,
another
this
agenda
last
item.
thing, seller
Okay.
trading.
This is something I'm really not sure what to do with.
Had that on my-
It's for an online retailer liquor store. This location is for storage, delivery only, and no public access. And it's from 8 to 8, I think, Monday through Sunday through Saturday. I can't find anything in the regulations for an online liquor store. And I'm really, this is going to be in the space, it's in the alley, in the same space as Direct Due Domain is.
Yep.
So there's already a Class A liquor license in that location. So this is like
Where
a
is
sec.
it?
No, this will be the third
Wait a
license.
minute, wait a minute. Where is
In
this
that, no,
location?
there's only one.
No,
in-
there's a distributor also there.
Oh, well, he never got an application, we never got that application.
So it was not part of our.
This is the
review.
alley behind,
The alley that separates Van Ness, my
Yeah.
apartment building, and the Doug Jamal building in
Right.
front.
okay.
You've got the Walgreens,
Mhm.
and then right next door, pretty much, there's a door
You're talking on the alley side.
on the alley
The
side.
basement of the building where 7-Eleven.
Okay.
It's the basement of the
Is
building.
they retrofitted the parking lot in the basement to a wine storage facility. So you can go over, it's very nice. And then they have a license, because they have, the people that rent space have tastings.
Never invited me.
I've never
So
been
according
invited.
to,
according to
So
the-
it's
they
like
also
it's
have.
like a vault.
It's a
like
vault,
It's a vault,
effectively.
Okay.
except that you're not supposed to, according to, I just
It's
read
a
the regs.
personal-
I read the regs, and the regs say you're not allowed to have tastings in that space.
I don't know.
I'm just saying.
Maybe that's why I haven't been invited.
But and then there is also
How long has this
there's
been
also
there?
a
Wait a
it's
second,
been there
Sally.
2 years.
It's been there about 2 years.
There's also a distributor license there, which because someone who distributes wine in DC stores his stuff there.
Uh-huh.
That
And we
is-
never got
it's-
notification
We
of that.
did not get notification because I looked into it a lot, and basically the distributor license we don't get notification because it's not sales or retail. And then
Same people?
it's basically the same people. I
So
think.
this one?
And
No,
then
this is
this,
a
I don't
different
actually
one.
know what this
Tell us
is.
what
So
you
did
got.
you have any?
I have not been able to
that's
get
different.
any information on it, but here's my concern.
Okay.
Sally, oh wait. Here's my concern. I don't know what to do about it. The petition date is March 24th. I can let it go and allow this to go through. We can file a protest against it, but I have to be honest, having been through a protest hearing on the Walgreens, I never want to do it again unless we have an ABRA lawyer.
Unless we have a lawyer?
Yeah, the ANC, because it's a very strict hearing. With witnesses, if you ask a question, they even take it out of your time. I mean, you need to know the ABRA regulations inside and out. So I honestly do not know what to do with this. And I'm not sure if you can even have an online liquor store in the district because I couldn't find it anywhere in the regs.
So they're shipping
So I guess
wine
people
from this
would be,
site.
Part of the problem is that the alley is only 16 feet, and it's a two-way alley, public alley,
Right, so,
and they put delivery trucks on
Trucks.
Van Ness property.
right.
They're blocking VZ Terrace, what's already there. But I honestly don't know what to do before this
We
protest
talked
day.
to the head of,
They don't tell you what to do.
they don't. So,
In the regulations, it basically says that an application is deemed appropriate for the location unless you protest it. Yeah, so they can send you anything, whether it's within the law or not, and if you don't do anything about it, it automatically becomes okay. That's in their regulations. Anyway, I'm open for some advice because I don't want to.
I mean, I guess. What's your concern? The alley?
My
Or is your
concern-
concern running an online liquor store out of the basement, or your concern the
My
alley?
concern is the alley, because currently the trucks are blocking the alley.
access is what you're more concerned
Access,
about.
yeah.
And use. When is it being used?
I mean,
All day, night?
It's Sunday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. That part doesn't concern me. It's,
Sunday through Saturday?
yeah, basically
every-
the concern.
So every day?
Yeah, it's basically, are they going to be packaging things, or do we have trucks there constantly? UPS, FedEx, whatever? Because they have no loading dock. They have no place for trucks. I don't know what to do. I have to be honest.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
They're parking on Van Ness South private property, our loading dock. They have one truck that comes that's oversized, that can't even pull into the alley. So it backs up over the Van Ness sidewalk. It's some company called Half Moon or something. So I'm
Can we
open
write
to
a letter
suggestions.
saying that,
Can we object based on access, or is that not?
One of the things that you can is, based on neighborhood disturbance and all that. But then it goes to a protest hearing or, and that's my big concern because I cannot do it again. I went through hell with that Walgreens one. 3 or 4 hearings up against one of the best ABRA lawyers in town.
I have a feeling they may not have the same representation in this case.
Oh, I'm not so sure.
I don't know.
No, Paul Pascal is already their lawyer. They've already got an ABRA lawyer. Anyway, I can let it
does the ANC then need to hire a lawyer to look into this for us?
Well, we don't have time. We have to do something by March 24th.
Well, then why can't we ask for an extension?
You can't. You can't ask them for extensions. They don't give them.
Well, Sounds
That's
like
the
we're in a
petition.
no-win position here.
No, I mean, we can protest it and then hire an attorney for the next one, because according to this, their protest hearing would not be until May 28th. But I'm not sure that the ANC wants to expend money for a lawyer.
You can make a resolution if you wish.
I don't know, I'm being honest, I don't know what to do with it.
I mean, I guess
Well, if we don't.
my general thought is I don't care if someone's running an online liquor store out of the basement. There's
I don't-
other stuff going on. I mean, I think there must be other mechanisms in protesting a liquor license to deal with the truck in your alley. I mean, call MPD
Yeah.
and get a ticketed $1,000 for idling or something.
No, well,
I mean,
we've
there's
tried that. The
things-
problem is by the time MPD shows up, these trucks
They're
are,
gone.
they're gone.
I mean, I think
It
then,
takes hours
you
to
know,
get
you
them.
then have one sit there. A cop
I
sit
don't know,
there.
they don't, you know, I don't know the answer. I don't, you know. I'm just being
Are they-
honest.
Have you noticed them doing packaging and all
Well,
the
this
trucks
does-
there?
This hasn't gone into
doesn't-
effect
This
yet.
does not exist right now.
Doesn't exist.
I guess.
Bob, any
I don't
thoughts?
know.
I think we should ask them to get a smaller vehicle.
I've tried that. That doesn't work.
I mean, you don't need that big a vehicle to deliver wine in DC. I mean,
This one comes, when I tell you, it is supersized, it won't fit in the alley.
yeah, but
That's secondary to this.
you
Yeah,
just
that has
don't
nothing to do with
need
this.
a truck that large.
Adam even called the owner of
For an
Direct Duty
online
Maine, and he didn't
deliveries,
know about it. So it could have been the distributor for all I know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't know they were down there.
Take a photo so we can.
Anyway, that's my quandary. I can protest it, it would go to mediation first.
I mean, I guess. Does anyone wish to offer a resolution on this? Of anything? I'll
I
keep
mean,
it open
everything
for
I've
20
mentioned,
seconds,
she said
'cause
it
we're just
can't
gonna
be
sit here all
done.
night.
Let's
So,
call it.
Manoli, do you have a resolution to offer on this?
No.
Okay, Sally.
no.
I think I'm just gonna let it slide.
Okay, I have nothing. Bob?
I think at some point we should ask them to get a smaller truck.
Fair enough.
But
Okay.
if this is an online.
Here it is, here.
I know, I think I got one as well, but if it's an online, then the vehicles that will almost certainly be used will be some sort of delivery service.
Probably UPS will
So
be
like
picking
UPS,
up boxes.
FedEx, picking
Yeah,
up
they
boxes.
usually come and pick it
So I
up,
think this is a
right.
different issue than the trucks that you're concerned about. that
Well,
currently-
no, I'm concerned about all of them, because all of their trucks are parking on our loading dock. They have, they're either that or they block the two-way alley. So cars start honking their horns,
Well, it says
and
no
there's
public
residents.
access.
Yeah, but that doesn't, the public access is not a truck, it's a you. You can't go in.
Okay, unless Manoli, you have something.
I got nothing.
No?
I don't-
Okay, then I'm gonna.
I'm just gonna let it slide.
I'm gonna close discussion on this since there's no resolution. I'll make the final one to adjourn this meeting.
No, I thought Sally
Wait
had
a
a
minute,
couple
I
of
have
things.
just a couple,
Are there things we need?
just a little housekeeping. I had sent around about a TOPS training session for Manoli, Mary Beth, and Malachi. I didn't hear back from anybody. Huh?
I don't want to be.
Maybe you can email them again.
You want me to email
Or
it
call
again?
them. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it was a refresher course because it said, I don't guess nobody read
Is
it.
it, I get a question, is it really that hard? They.
You need a password and
You
everything.
gotta
so
get
you
a
have to-
password.
They won't go
Bob,
through the
have you
training
talked
without
to-
the.
That's correct.
I've been
Oh, baloney. I'll get
swamped
it.
at work.
Okay.
I haven't had a
I
chance to
mean,
do
yes,
that.
you
think-
have to go.
Are you in
Maybe
TOPS?
send a reminder.
I'll send a
I-
reminder. I just need to know some dates.
I've lost
that's all.
my ID
know.
and password, so
Well, I can't get
we
in
can-
still.
This
Well-
is
You
not
can't
some-
get in
This
still?
is not
I
something.
sent Shell an email.
I haven't worried about it.
We
I
don't.
can
We
get
don't
in.
need to vote on this.
No, we
I'd
don't
rather
need to
have
vote.
access
I
to
just
do that.
wanted
DGS
to,
system.
get back to her
Okay. I don't.
and get the three of us because
It's
we
not
all,
just
we
Bob.
all can't.
Or even a
No, it's
refresher
the
course.
three that haven't.
They haven't had the training,
But
but
the
Bob,
they've done enhancements, so the four of us understand. That's what I want you to understand. It's not just, because we've been
I
through
have
the
a
course.
suggestion. Is it possible for Cheryl to come here during our meeting and train us?
No.
No?
No, our meetings are long enough. I mean,
No, I didn't know if I
people are
wanted to-
walking out.
Okay,
No,
we
I
can,
know.
we can discuss this through email. We're not taking any vote
Yeah,
on
okay.
this.
And it is
And
quarter
then
after
the
10.
only other thing is the age-friendly DC Block by Block Walk. Marlene had sent around about the sidewalk being surveyed by each ANC's single-member district commissioner, which we all, some of us said that sounds like a good idea. Did anybody get anything in the mail or in email about
No,
it?
and
Do you have any
I
thoughts
saw-
on it?
I
saw her
would like,
email,
I
but
have
I-
a suggestion.
Yeah.
The Office of Aging is going out on behalf of the entire district, working
Correct.
with DDOT.
Right, block by block.
Block by block.
Volunteers.
Volunteers,
And
block
they're
by.
asking for ANC
They
help.
aren't asking for ANC help.
Yes, they do.
I read it.
It did, it said,
Well, I don't know what you're reading. That's
off the
that's-
website,
I mean, I guess, no.
which is
So-
divided into ANC single-member districts.
Is this something we need to vote on?
It's divided.
No, it's
in-
not
Wait a minute,
divided.
it's- wait a second,
So
Sal.
let's adjourn the meeting,
Wait a
then we
minute.
can talk. So
Yeah, adjourn the
I'm
meeting.
making a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Anyway,
5-0.
because
Thank
it's
you.
divided by ANC doesn't mean the ANC has to participate.